Part 46. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 452. When she heard Yu Liangxin's voice, the veins on Lily's forehead could not help but jump. This person was really annoying. The other teachers in the office were staring at this, obviously looking at the show. Yu Liangxin ran away. His cheeks were slightly red, looking like he was a little scared but still had the courage. Although I am not qualified to meddle in the Zhu family's business, I am AAO's teacher, and I have the obligation to help him. Ziahe, I will not admit defeat. Even if you are my friend, I will not agree with him your approach. Who wants your approval? Lily asked coldly. Yu Liangxin looked at Lily, biting her lips as if she had been wronged in some way. Tears rolled in her eyes. After a while, she smiled softly. He said twice and took 2 steps back. Haha, I thought we were friends, but I didn't expect that in your heart. After Yu Liangxin said this, she sniffed and blinked her eyes hard. She reached out and clenched her fists to wipe away her tears, and then she showed a fragile smile. But even so, I don't care about AAO. He won't take care of it. You don't care about him, I will take care of him. Just when Lily thought she was going to take care of it, Yu Liangxin suddenly rushed out of the office and bent her waist at a deep 90-degree angle towards the group of teachers who were looking at the excitement outside the office hall. Please help a child named Zhu Ao. I just ask you to eat less snacks, buy less cosmetics, and even buy less clothes. You can save his life. A group of female teachers who were sitting together outside and flipping through fashion magazines suddenly turned pale. They looked like they wanted to get angry, but they didn't dare to turn away because they thought about Yu Liangxin being covered by Chi Tao and other princes. All of them were trying their best to hold it back, and they were so angry that they dared not speak out, which made Lily lean against the door panel and laugh. The office was so quiet for a while that you could hear the drop of a pin. Yu Liangxin was still begging these female teachers to show mercy. A group of teachers were so depressed that their faces turned blue, purple, and green. Finally, some people couldn't hold it back. After taking a few deep breaths, I managed to squeeze out a smile. Teacher Yu, stop joking. They are here to dress up and find a marriage partner, not to do charity. If it weren't for Yu Liangxin's status with the 3 princes, everyone would have turned against her and told her to go away. Why would they have said so much to her? However, Yu Liangxin gritted her teeth and suddenly her legs shook. Soft, he knelt down on the ground. Please. Please, as long as you are willing to help, it will be possible. Please. Her voice became softer and softer, and she looked very helpless. I will kneel down for you, really. Please. Yu Liangxin's behavior obviously once again greatly exceeded the imagination of the female teachers in the office. A person who had just entered the office carrying a teacup saw such a scene. The water she just drank in her mouth spurted out. Before the teacher could recover, she was pushed away. Qin Zayanan, who had arrived outside the office door at some unknown time, looked at the office with some pity. The slender figure glanced at me with a look of distress in his eyes. Why would you kneel down and beg them for other men? As long as you tell me, I will satisfy you with anything. Lily clearly read such a message from the eyes of Qin Zayanan, who was standing at the door. She leaned against the door and laughed until her stomach hurt. Qin Zayanan seemed to notice her sarcastic expression. He glanced at Lily with sharp eyes, probably thinking of the scene at the foot of the mountain. His expression suddenly became gloomy. He snorted and narrowed his eyes, with a ruthless look on his eyebrows. Lily sneered twice at Qin Zayanan, then turned around and entered the office. Qin Zayanan was born in a dark family, and he was not a kind-hearted person. He had murderous intentions towards her at this time. Lily naturally wanted to strike first. Her martial arts was not high enough to attack Qin Zayanan without leaving any trace, so she moved her hand to the gun she had in her bag and finally put it down. She originally thought that Qin Zayanan would sneak attack on her again like last time. Lily originally put the gun she got from Zayanan on her body when she went to and from get off work, but she didn't expect that half a month passed by and Zayanan not only didn't come. Zayanan didn't appear in the school at all during this period, and Yu Liangzin also began to run around for Zhu Ao to stay in the aristocratic school smoothly. At first, she wanted to use her own efforts. She asked Zhu Ao to stay in school, but she didn't expect that no one was willing to donate money to her after she begged for a long time. Instead, it attracted the attention of many people in the school these days. Yu Liangzin in the school has become completely popular recently. Well, no one dared to say it, but they were laughing at her secretly. Even the principal, who rarely appeared in the school on weekdays, came to the office and hinted at Yu Liangzin for a long time, but she seemed not to understand at all and still went her own way. When Lily went to work in the morning and saw Yu Liangzin standing at the school gate with a donation box in her hands, her little face full of seriousness, she almost burst into tears. Yu Liangzin obviously also saw her, who had just got off the school bus. She bit her lip and turned her face away. She didn't see any money in the transparent glass donation box she was holding. Lily just looked at it. After a quick glance, there was a sound of vehicles accelerating outside the school gate. Several arrogant sports cars next to each other at the foot of the mountain quickly stopped at the school gate. When the school guards saw these sports cars, they hurriedly left the security room. After coming out of the school, he stood respectfully outside the school. Several tall and handsome boys got out of the car one after another. They threw the keys in their hands into the hands of the security guards. After treating these security guards as parking boys, they saw standing aside Yu Liangzin frowned at the head of a young man with long blonde hair. When Lily saw these people appearing, she immediately recognized that they were Chi Tao and the other third princes. She turned aside and stepped aside. Several people passed by her with their hands in their pockets and their heads held high, and headed directly towards Yu Lian. Xian walked over, and when she saw these people, Yu Liangzin showed a shy and nervous expression on her face, but the few teenagers glanced at her, winked at her, and then walked towards the school without saying a word. After going in, Yu Liangzin hesitated for a while, wondering what kind of determination she had made. After a long while, she finally put down the donation box in her hand and followed a few teenagers. After the first class, Lily took the time to go to the school bathroom. I wonder if it was because it was already time to go to class. There was no one in the bathroom. When Lily had tidied her clothes and hadn't opened the bathroom door, something happened. Thin footsteps came in again, occasionally mixed with a whimper. The sound sounded familiar. Lily stepped on the toilet and looked out through the crack in the door. She saw a small waiting book bar originally set up outside the toilet. Yu Ling Xian was stripped naked and pressed on the sofa by Chi Tao. I don't know why she encountered such a scene twice in the toilet. Lily couldn't help gritting her teeth. Outside, Yu Liangzin had already taken off her clothes, but the princes were neatly dressed. Little goblin, why are you so concerned about other men's affairs? Do you want him to die? A young man with an evil face stretched out his hand and pulled Yu Liangzin's hair, gritting his teeth and said, Azo, she is so disrespectful. She's obedient, how do you think we should teach her a lesson? The more Lily listened, the more she felt sad. She remembered the last time she received the plot, these people had a lively scene in the toilet. She didn't know that she would have to wait for a long time today. The aristocratic school implements elite education, and this is the high school department. Each class lasts at least 1 hour. If this group of people is still worried about students barging in after class, they may disperse after an hour. There is nothing to do in the toilet. Fortunately, each toilet is very large. This is the advantage of aristocratic schools. In addition to the toilet, each individual toilet room also has a full-length mirror and a separate sink. If you are just one person, there must be enough space for activities, so Lily just listened to the moaning sounds outside, and started to practice the star training technique. When the bell rang for the end of get out of class, these people finally stopped making trouble, but they did not leave. Instead, they started to enter the toilet with Yu Liangzin in their arms. Coincidentally, one of them pulled the toilet stall where Lily was. Door. Hey, Azo, why can't this place be opened? The young man's originally full of lustful voice was like someone pouring cold water on his head. Several people were startled at this moment, and Yu Lian was shocked. After gasping and crying, Lily felt that the toilet door was being pulled up desperately from the outside. It was really unlucky for people to have water stuck between their teeth when they drank water. Naturally, she couldn't let anyone find out that she was hiding in the toilet right now. So she gritted her teeth desperately and held onto the door. Although there were several strong young people outside, Lily had practiced martial arts for nearly a month and already had a certain amount of internal strength in her body. In addition, the toilet door was locked, so for a while the people outside could not open the toilet even with their combined efforts. At this moment, the princes are no longer prepared to cling to Yu Lian. Even if they are famous and popular on this campus, if the news about the three princes fooling around in the toilet with the poor female teacher in the school spreads, going out was still a huge blow to their reputation. They could do such a thing, but they couldn't let others know. Therefore, the few people outside could not care about enjoying themselves with Yu Liangzin anymore. Instead, they all locked the door desperately and went out. Pull. Lily was holding the door tightly from the inside. After the people outside were so exhausted that they were sweating profusely, the princes finally couldn't bear it anymore. Some people started to squat down and look in through the gap in the toilet below. Lily had already expected at this point. She covered her head and face with clothes. When Chi Tao looked in, he only saw a person wearing the uniform of a female teacher of an aristocratic school, but his face could not be seen clearly. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. Your support is my biggest motivation. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 453. People inside, come out and talk to me if you have anything to say, otherwise don't blame me for being merciless. Chi Tao dragged him for a long time, and got a little angry. He stretched out his hand and smashed the toilet door, and then kicked it with his legs. He began to threaten, I count to 3, if you don't come out yet, you will stay in the toilet. The school has ended, and people will come to the toilet one after another after a while. If someone sees a few people pulling the door of the women's toilet here, it will also damage their image. Lily ignores him and goes out now. He was really asking for trouble. After counting twice, Chi Tao became angry and said, get something to lock the toilet door. If she doesn't come out, don't let her come out again. Find out which female teacher in the school is not in the office right now. Let's go. The voices of students talking and laughing could be vaguely heard outside. The princes hesitated for a moment. Lily only heard the sound of locks on the door, and her face couldn't help but darken. A group of people came out to play. Her daughter had to carry a lock and key with her. It's really a bit of a backup. The sound of footsteps came from outside. Lily opened her clothes from the crack in the door and looked outside. These people had gone far away, so she jumped down from the toilet. The voices outside were getting closer and closer. Chi Tao and others should. After walking far, Lily tried to pull the door first. After a tug of war between her and several princes, no matter how good the quality of the door was, it would inevitably shake and make a sound. The lock outside seemed to have a chain. Yes, Lily opened the iron bolt inside the door, and when she saw the thing used to lock the toilet door above, she was speechless again. Chi Tao and others actually used the handcuffs that had been used to lock Yu Liangzin's hands to lock the toilet door. No wonder she was curious as to why these people wore locks when they went out. Lily tried to put her fingers in through the crack of the door. She used her inner strength on her fingertips and made a soft click sound. Although the handcuffs were well made, They still cracked when Lily pinched them like this. Lily pushed the door open. Instead of going out at this moment, he took off his female teacher's coat. There was really no way to cover her skirt. She thought for a moment and took off the sweater she was wearing to cover her buttocks. After a wave of students came in to use the toilet, she mixed in with the group of female students before following them out. When we returned to the office, the female teachers who usually liked to sit outside in the office hall and gather together to chat began to come back one after another. When this group of people came in, they looked puzzled, and one female teacher still had snacks in her hand. I returned to my seat and sat down. Strange, why did the students from the student union ask to go to the student union office for a meeting today? Although we can see Chi Tao and others, will anyone come to the school today? Everyone shook their heads. Lily was spraying her coat with perfume in the office. Her coat had just been stained with a lot of incense from the toilet, with a refreshing lemon fragrance. Anyone with a sharp nose might know that she had been in the toilet. Fortunately, Zhu Lily had bought a bottle of branded perfume before. She kept it in the office like a treasure, not willing to use it more. Lily rarely used perfume after entering the mission, so she left this thing in the office. At this time, she found it and sprayed it all over her head, face, and clothes. Then she heard a few people outside. The teacher talked about how people from the student union summoned everyone to the student union today. Not long after, the phone in the office rang. Sure enough, it was the news that the principal had asked a group of male and female teachers to go to the student union for a meeting. When a group of teachers heard that they could go to the student union, they didn't resist too much. Many people showed some excitement. Lily was among a group of people and walked all the way to the student union office. At this time, Chi Zhao and others should have informed the teachers of the entire aristocratic school. At this time, the student union office of Nottingham University, there were people in uniform standing in front of the building. On weekdays, even the principal of the school may not have such great appeal. On campus, only the heirs of the three major families in the future may be able to summon all the male and female teachers from many backgrounds to hold a meeting with just one phone call. It seems that a sofa and coffee table have been set up outside. Chino is lazily sitting on the sofa wearing a gray silk shirt and black casual trousers. A ferocious-looking Tibetan Mastiff is lying at his feet obediently. A hand gently stroked the dog's huge head. Even though the dog had its eyes narrowed, it looked fierce. There was another prince sitting on the sofa on the other side, but the heir of the Bai family was not here. The surroundings were in a mess. Chi Tao's face now lost the anger he had seen when he saw it in the toilet before, and returned to normal. With a cold and cool expression, he didn't even look at the group of teachers. His expressionless look actually made many female teachers jealous, and they stared at him intently. "Are everyone here?" Chi Tao asked, crossing his legs and pointing to a stack of thick papers on the coffee table next to him. "Take it down and let them sign it." The principal, who was waiting on the side, nodded and bowed in response. He followed Chi Tao's assistants and took the paper and began to ask the teachers to draw ticks one by one. This is a thick stack of paper, with the names and information of all the teachers in the aristocratic school written on it. When he found his name and information, the teacher drew a tick under the gaze of the principal and assistants. When it was Lily's turn, the page had almost been ticked off. She guessed that Chi Tao and others were making such a big fuss in order to find out who was in the toilet. However, in order to hide the name from others, she also called the male teacher. Coming over, Lily calmly checked in her name. Half a quarter of an hour later, after all the teachers' names were checked, an assistant walked over to Chi Tao with a phone. This cold-looking young man finally expressed his expression for the first time. He looked a little horrified. "What? Ran away? The lock broke." He looked very ugly for a moment. Lily could see it clearly. He almost crushed the phone in his hand. The other end should be saying that the handcuffs locking the toilet were broken. Lily sneered in her heart, and Chi Tao hung up the phone. He looked at everyone present with a gloomy look, and stood up. He patted the dog he had been stroking. The Tibetan Mastiff also stood up, shook its body, and rushed towards a group of teachers. This Tibetan Mastiff is very fierce. Normally, the teachers in aristocratic schools are from extraordinary backgrounds, if they are not in this school. Anyone here who goes out is someone who will be praised by others. At this time, they have to swallow their anger in front of someone who is more fierce than them. When the dog rushed over, everyone's face changed slightly with fright. Many people dared to be angry but did not dare to. Her body instinctively wanted to hide, especially when the dog sniffed on her body. Several female teachers were so frightened that their bodies trembled. When the dog ran to Lily, Lily's eyes narrowed. Although she had sprayed perfume on her body, she didn't know if she could hide it from this Tibetan Mastiff with a keen sense of smell. When she was thinking about whether she should rip off a hidden button on her skirt and use her internal force to force the dog away, unexpectedly this Tibetan Mastiff passed by. There was a look of fear in her eyes when he was next to her. Her tail was instinctively tucked between her legs, and she ran to the other side with a ouch cry. Champion, the dog didn't act like he had found the person in the toilet. Chi Tao hesitated for a moment and called the dog. The dog flicked its tail and ran towards him, but it didn't look like anything was wrong. Finally, although the incense in each toilet in the noble school is different, there are several people who go to that toilet during recess time, and the dog stops and barks every time he is next to someone. There was an assistant nearby who wrote down the person's name. Lily looked at the innocent faces of the unlucky people she had implicated. I felt relieved. This farce didn't end until the last prince returned. The boy named Bai, who usually liked to laugh, also had a gloomy look on his face. His baby face now showed a bit of chill. Those people didn't know how to discuss it. What? Qi Zhao finally announced that a group of teachers should leave individually. Several female teachers originally thought that coming to the student union would be an opportunity for them to get close to the three princes. However, they did not expect that the princes did not touch them and were almost bitten by dogs. They were all so frightened now that they supported each other and left. Lily, caught in the crowd, turned and glanced in the direction where Chi Tao and others were standing. As if feeling her gaze, Chi Tao turned his head. The moment he turned his head, Lily lowered her head and stood aside. The princes made a big fuss to find out the person who peeped in the toilet, but after a long time of fussing, they found nothing. After that day, even if no one in the school dared to talk loudly about what Chi Tao and others had done before, discussions are unavoidable, but there are still benefits. When the salary was settled this month, Lily still laughed when she found the extra double salary in her reissued salary card. She was short of money now. After she lost her cell phone, she had no one to contact, so she never bought it. Zhu's father and mother told her several times. Lily didn't have much money at the time, and she didn't want Zhu anymore. The matter of father and mother's money and mobile phone was put aside until now. Now that her salary was paid, Lily went to buy a mobile phone as soon as possible. When she got home, Zhu's father and mother, who were usually at home, actually went out at this time. She didn't leave a note at home. She didn't have a mobile phone before. Lily guessed that Zhu's father and Zhu's mother might have gone somewhere. Anyway, when she returned home, if her parents really had something urgent to go out and couldn't make it back, they would still call the landline. Lily didn't take this matter to heart, but when her father and mother didn't come back until 9 o'clock in the evening, Lily felt that something was wrong. She took out her newly bought mobile phone and called, but the message on the other end was that the call could not be reached. Lily's heart sank, but the landline at home rang. She picked up the phone. The other party must have used a voice changer, and she couldn't tell the man or woman. Zhu Lily, your brother is in my hands. Whether you kill him or sell him, it has nothing to do with me. That's it. When Lily heard that it was Zhu Ao, she felt disgusted. After finishing her words quickly, she was about to hang up the phone. The other end obviously didn't expect her. He actually said this. He was stunned for a moment and said anxiously, "Your parents are also in my hands." When Lily heard this, she fell silent, and the person opposite seemed to be relieved. Before 10 o'clock, come to a bar called City of Desire in the south of the city. I will contact you again then. This matter was obviously done against him. Apart from offending Yu Liangzin, Zhu Beihe had not offended anyone else, except Qin Zayanan. Forget about Zhu Ao, if Zhu Ao and Zhu Ao were really in his hands, she would have to go this time. Lily was a little tired of causing so many troubles one after another for the sake of Yu Liangzin. The pistol she got from Qin Zayanan last time was put on her body. Now she has been involved in the plot for a while. Her martial arts training is not particularly high, but at least she can deal with ordinary gangsters with weak internal strength and the accumulation of her many missions. The martial arts experience she had gained could cope with it, so Lily packed up and went out directly. She took a taxi to the designated bar and entered the bar. Several big men gathered around, sandwiched her and pushed her inside. Lily didn't struggle and allowed them to take her to the second floor of the bar. As expected, there were people sitting in a private room with gloomy expressions on their faces. Qin Zayanan, who was surrounded by a group of men in black, was like a king in the dark night. He had lost the youthfulness he had in school during the day, and showed a bit of loss and bluff that seemed ridiculous to Lily. Among them, what surprised Lily was that Zhu Ao was also there. He stood next to Qin Zayanan. Lily didn't notice him during this period. He had dyed his hair ridiculously purple, had earrings pierced on his ears, and was wearing a pair of ripped jeans. He looked gaudy. Zhu Ao. Why are you here? Where are my parents? After knowing that Zhu Ao was not the biological son of the Zhu family, Zhu Ao's father and Zhu's mother initially thought about taking care of him, but Zhu Ao always felt that he had a car accident and Zhu's father had received a lot of compensation from the other party. The money was hidden and not given to him, but instead he was transferred to another school. This made Zhu Ao especially angry. He became very rebellious after being discharged from the hospital. Every day, the words of wishing my father and mother were ignored, and I would yell loudly and ignore them at every turn. Skipping school and running away from home became a common occurrence. He was not his biological son in the first place. What little affection Zhu's father and mother had for him gradually became less and less due to Zhu Ao's wear and tear, and in the end he was too lazy to do so. Never mind, Zhu Ao had already left home for 2 days before today. Lily didn't expect that he would hang out with Qin Zayanan. I wonder if the two of them had the same odor. The reason why they all like Yu Liangzin the same. But, what parents? Two old bitches, they are not my parents at all. When Zhu Ao heard Lily's words, he immediately became furious and almost jumped up. Fortunately, I saw that picture when I went back today. Note, otherwise I really wouldn't have known that you and your family were working together to punish me. No wonder you embezzled my compensation, and no wonder you didn't allow me to study in a noble school. It turns out you had planned it in advance. As Zhu Ao spoke, he took out a piece of paper from his trouser pocket and threw it at Lily. These two old immortals are not my parents at all and they dare to take care of me. They ate my money and refused to give me any money. Now brother Qin will help me get it back in full. When Lily heard what he said, she calmly bent down to pick up the piece of paper. The burly man standing behind clenched his fist and swept over her head. Be honest. Lowering her head to avoid the fist, Lily quickly picked up the note. After spreading it out to read, it read, "We have found the place where we held the wrong child. Your mother and I will rush there in as little as 3 days. If you come back in 5 days, don't think about it." The name of Zhu's father was also written on the back. Zhu's father was a teacher in his early years and was good at writing with a pen. Lily knew it was his handwriting at a glance. There was nothing wrong with Zhu's father. Lily felt relieved at first, and then his face became gloomy again. Since nothing happened to my parents, Zuao, you knew they would leave, but you deliberately led me here. Chinzayanan, who was sitting on the sofa, clapped his hands and sneered, I've given you my life so many times and run away. Now I see how you run away. Either kneel down and beg for mercy from teacher you and cut off one of your hands after a while, let's forget the matter between us, or you just want to have fun with my brothers, don't even think about leaving this place today. Maybe he thought that Lily could no longer escape from his grasp, but Chinzayanan didn't hiding his purpose. He pointed at the big men around him, stood up, turned around and went out without even looking at Lily. Chinzayanan knew that even if he left, his men would carry out the order he had just given, so he did not show any intention of staying and watching. Zuao followed him and smiled coldly at Lily. After leaving, the door was closed. About 7 or 8 strong men in the room gathered around Lily. Some of them had an axe in their hands and threw it in front of Lily. Lily neither wanted to break her hand nor to cripple it. Chinzayanan was right about his own feet. He always had to go against him for Yu Liangzin again and again. Not to mention that he was impatient, Lily was already a little impatient. She stood up now, after seeing that there was nothing in the hands of the group of people. Lily suddenly squatted down. When the group of people thought she wanted to pick up the axe, she stretched out her legs to sweep them away. Maybe some of Chinzayanan's people had suffered from her move before. Several big men were alert and jumped back. No one was caught by her, but seeing Lily still resisting at this time, a group of big men were angry. He stood up, clenched his fists and rushed over. Lily might not be able to deal with a group of real masters at this time, but although Chinzayanan is the heir of the Black Path, he is not the real leader at this time. He has bodyguards around him, but the strength is not particularly high. It is enough for ordinary girls to do kidnapping, but it is far from the title of master. Lily has real power in her hands. After quickly knocking down 2 big men, someone just after picking up the axe, Lily had already taken out the gun on her waist. Don't move, otherwise if my hands shake accidentally, don't blame me due to the difference in physical strength. Lily took a few breaths and pulled up the safety of the gun. The big men did not expect that there was a pistol, and everyone was shocked. Lily took the axe from the big man's hand, relying on the weapon in her hand. Without thinking, she swung the axe with one hand and hit one of the big men on the head. She never thought about making trouble. There was no one killed, so his men used a measured force, but the big man was still beaten to a bloody head, and passed out without saying a word on the spot. Lily followed the same pattern and knocked the remaining people to the ground. Then she threw the axe and went to open the door. The door was not locked. Chinzayanan should think that this time he had a chance to win. Lily went downstairs and took advantage of the dim light of the bar. Turning on the light, she saw Chinzayanan's figure sitting in a corner of the bar, explaining something to someone. After a while, she led Zuao away alone. Originally, Chinzayanan was the son of the leader of the Black Road, and he should have many bodyguards around him. However, in order to deal with Lily, he took the initiative to keep the people around him. Lily followed quietly at this moment, taking advantage of Chinzayanan's absence. When he was in the car, he kicked Zuao away. Before he could react, he strangled Chinzayanan's neck and hit him on the head with his elbow. He hit him 5 or 6 times in a row before Chinzayanan gradually stopped struggling. Zuao, who was lying on the ground, was kicked for a long time and could not get up. He was originally loved by Zhu's father and mother, but looking at the tall man and horse, he looked useless. Now he was knocked down by Lily. He struggled twice and before he could get up, Lily kicked him in the head again, knocking him unconscious. Doesn't Chinzayanan like to play with women? Lily wants to let him have a good time. Almost everyone in the capital knows what kind of place it is on the north side of the city. Lily carried the 2 unconscious people into the car, got into the driver's seat and started the car, and then directly transported the two people there. There was a street in the north of the city that was a red light district. Lily parked the car on the side of the road, took her bank card and withdrew all her wages. She randomly found a hair salon and dragged Chinzayanan and the two of them in. The two seemed to be outsiders, and some older and scantily clad women were sitting in front of the mirror, pulling their hair. When they saw a guest coming in, the two of them stood up. Lily lowered her voice. "Do you know anyone from other shops around here?" The two women looked confused, but they were very happy to see business coming to them. They nodded hurriedly, and Lily took it out of the bag first. 10 won waved in front of Xiang Ren. 200 yuan per person, please serve these two people well. The more people, the better, regardless of gender. And I want to see your evidence. If you have the ability, you can let them stay until tomorrow night. In addition to these 10,000 yuan, I'll pay another 10,000 yuan. People in the red light district here rarely see such generous patrons, so when they heard this, they were both surprised and happy. The two women even took the initiative to drag Chinzayanan out of his sleep. The two took it and called others in the store to go outside and call for help. The business here is deserted. Generally, rich people go to high-end clubs. Therefore, although there is business here on weekdays, it is not good. I didn't expect such a rich man to come all of a sudden. Anyway, they charge per visit and do the work. If it works out well and you can get some extra money, naturally the two women will be active. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. Your support is my biggest motivation. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 454. He wasn't worried that Chinzayanan and the others would faint and be unable to do anything. Anyway, people in this industry had some methods that could always make it possible for them to do their job. After she finished all this, she turned around and left. The woman hesitated for a moment, and just then when he was about to call her to stop, Lily dropped the words that she would come to get the evidence and pay tomorrow, and turned around and left the store. After taking her revenge and exercising some more, Lily looked at the caller ID on her landline when she returned home. She didn't call back from her father and mother. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she practiced star training with 9. Yang Zhenjing spent the night like this, and when he went to work the next day, Chinzayanan did not come to school. Although it had become a common occurrence for him to be absent from class, no one in the school dared to say anything because of his status. This time when Lily thought about the reason why he didn't come, she felt a bad breath in her heart. After class in the morning, Yu Liangzin blocked Lily outside the classroom door. Yu Liangzin had long forgotten what she had said before to distance herself from Lily. She looked at Lily worriedly and said, Zayanan classmate hasn't come to class for 2 days, and his mobile phone can't be reached. I wonder if something has happened. Let's go to his house for a home visit together. Yu Liangzin considers herself a good, conscientious teacher. She must treat every student equally, and also wants to visit the students' homes. However, Chinzayanan's home is a shady one. She has been there once and even she was driven out at gunpoint before she even entered the door, which almost scared her to death. She didn't dare to go alone this time, so she wanted to find someone to accompany her. But it happened that no one in the school was friends with her except Zhu Beihe. Although the 3 princes had that kind of relationship with her, if they knew that they were looking for a man, they would definitely be unfavorable to Chinzayanan and drive him out. In school, Zhu Ao had already been transferred to another school. Yu Liangzin didn't want such a tragedy to happen again, so she planned to ask Lily to accompany her to strengthen her courage. Looking at Yu Liangzin, who looked hopeful but also a little worried, Lily was so depressed that she couldn't speak. Yu Liangzin was still talking to herself. I have already inquired about the home of classmate Zayanan. The bus can't go there. It's a pity. We have to take a taxi. Don't worry, Ziahe, I won't let you. It's the car payment last time. Yu Liangzin didn't help with Zhu Ao's transfer of schools. Because the three princes intervened and warned her that she would teach Zhu Ao a lesson if she continued to meddle in her own business, Yu Liangzin did not dare to cause trouble to poor Zhu Ao anymore, but she still left in her heart that Lily liked money and he has the impression of being stingy, and is deeply afraid that Lily will not be with him for taxi money. So she emphasized. I already brought the money. Teacher Yu, can you please stop coming to see me again? You and I were no longer friends before. Lily took a deep breath. He said bluntly, and I don't want to go on a home visit, so please get out of the way now. Zayanan probably didn't come because he was sick. You are also his teacher. Shouldn't a teacher care about his students? Ziahe, why are you like this now? Yu Liangzin felt a little aggrieved, but also somewhat puzzled. I said. Let me remind you, teacher Yu. You are just a teacher. It's your business to visit your own home. Don't involve me again. Lily slowly began to feel a little impatient. Yu Liangzin said to everyone her so-called students all have a virgin attitude. Adolescent boys are inherently impulsive. The consequences of her kind intentions are not good. The reason why she has emotional entanglements with the three princes is because when she saw Chi-Chi, she didn't recognize Chi-Chi's name at first. After calling him Chi-Chi, she attracted Chi-Chi's attention. In the end, she thought he had no food to eat, so she filled up the food she had made. It was only then that the prince became interested in her and finally adopted her as a woman by giving her a lunchbox that felt like home. In Yu Liangzin's opinion, her behavior is just a kind of kindness and concern for the students, but in the eyes of anyone else, her behavior is suspected of pretending to be innocent and seducing others. Who can enter this aristocratic school without having a previous background? Human generation? Who will miss that bite of food? What's more, leaving aside the three princes, Yu Liangzin is also ambiguous about Zhu Ao in the plot. She keeps calling Ao affectionately, and her behavior has already exceeded the boundaries of ordinary teachers caring about students. After getting together with the third prince, she gradually became beautiful through dressing up. It was normal for Zhu Ao to like her. Later, Qin Zayanan fell in love with her silently and was willing to give up his identity as heir for her and become a nameless and statusless follower beside her. On the surface, what Yu Liangzin does seems to be innocent and caring, treating every boy as her own student, but in fact she is like a queen bee, attracting every worker bee. Lily doesn't like people like her. Maybe Yu Liangzin didn't mean to do this, but she did inadvertently cause such a result. The most important thing is that she wants to attract bees and butterflies, so why should she let herself going to serve as her foil? Lily thought of what happened yesterday. Even though she had already taken revenge on Qin Zayanan, she knew that Qin Zayanan and Zhu Ao would be having a hard time at this time, but she still felt a burst of anger in her heart, and Yu Liangzin was still angry. With a concerned look on her face, she asked her to visit the person who almost had her hands and feet cut off. The more Lily looked at her, the more impatient she became, and she said directly, "Get away. If I were you, I would take those two words back." A somewhat cold voice sounded, and Yu Liangzin's originally pointed little face began to blush a little, and then changed as if she remembered something. She was pale, she bit her lower lip with her teeth, and her body shivered slightly. Not far away, three princes headed by Qinyo, who was carrying his pockets with both hands, were walking towards the side. Apparently, what they had just said between Lily and Yu Liangzin was heard by them. Qinyo had a handsome face at this time. It was so dark that he stretched out his hand to Yu Liangzin. "Come here." Yu Liangzin hesitated for a moment and glanced at Lily as if asking for help. After seeing that Lily ignored her, she slowly moved toward Chi Tao with a sad face. Chi Tao stretched out his hand to grab her. Fortunately, this time it was already time for school to end, and almost everyone in the classroom had left. Only then did Chi Tao dare to be so direct. He grabbed Yu Liangzin and pushed her into the arms of the laughing boy with dyed maroon hair next to him. Then he crossed his arms over his chest, his eyes showed a bit of sharpness, he stared at Lily closely and asked. On October 21st, after the second class, where were you? Chi Tao seemed to have doubts about Lily at this time. He looked at Lily and sneered, "Don't try to hide it from me." That day every teacher in the school has someone who testifies to each other, but you are the only one who doesn't, not to mention that I have seen a lot of women like you. If you are wise enough to tell the truth, otherwise, don't blame me for being cruel. Lily's face darkened, and before she could speak, a somewhat familiar voice sounded from afar, "Ms. Zhu." Several people turned around and looked over. A young man with blonde hair was wearing a white serious suit. Standing there gracefully, smiling like a ray of sunshine, he just stood there, as if he had become a landscape, attracting everyone's attention. "Bale, why did you come to school?" Chi Tao, who had been threatening Lily just now, his eyes widened in an instant. Even the young man surnamed Bai who was holding Yu Liangzin subconsciously let go of Yu Liangzin who was half hugged in his arms. The young man coughed twice, paused and then walked over. About 5 meters away from where he just stood, a man with gray hair who looked like a housekeeper stood quietly, his eyes like a hawk. "What's wrong?" When the young man walked to Lily, he stopped and glanced at Chi Tao and others with a pair of smiling blue eyes, which looked a little ugly. Finally, they fell on Lily, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. Again. Others didn't understand what he was talking about, but Lily knew that he was implying that he had helped her again. This young man named Basil looked unusually gentle, and at this moment he clearly wanted to help her, as if he was afraid that she would be embarrassed. He used a joking method to resolve her discomfort. He stood a little close to her. Even though they had hitchhiked with him twice and several times, they always sat on their own sides when riding in the car, except for Basil. When the gentleman opened the door for her, the two of them had never been so close. Lily subconsciously took a step back, and then apologized to him. "Thanks." The young man's eyelids drooped, but there was still a smile on the corner of his mouth. The expression on his face looked so gentle that it was intoxicating, but inexplicably it made people feel a little hairy all over. He was dressed very formally today. His blonde hair was combed back with hairspray, revealing his plump and white forehead. Such an old-fashioned hairstyle did not seem inconsistent or heavy on him, but instead gave him a bit of an old aristocratic gentleman and look. In a dignified manner, he stood quietly and said nothing, but no one dared to interrupt his silence. "Ziahe, is this your friend?" The first one to speak was Yu Liangzin, the timidest among the others. She tilted her head and looked at Basil curiously, with a hint of surprise flashing in her eyes. His facial features are deep, but his temperament is elegant and gentle. He is not the type that is so handsome that it gives people a very aggressive feeling. On the contrary, his whole body is filled with a comfortable warmth, and he has a look like a prince who came out of Europe in the Middle Ages. It feels like there is elegance in everything you do. In fact, Chi Tao and others are also very handsome now, but compared with Luo Le, the aura of these people has been suppressed now, whether it is Chi's eyes crazy coolness or Bai Ziu, they are all understated. Going down, under Basil's gentle and warm expression, he looked a bit embarrassed. "Basil, why did you appear in school?" "To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. Your support is my biggest motivation. Mobile phone users, please go to read. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. Your support is my biggest motivation. P.S. The belated 4th update. Although the author's latest update is late, there are 4 updates every day. There are no less, but the big update includes the small updates together. 4. Tongmen's Heshabai, add 10 more. After typing for a long time to explain the reason, it actually exceeded the number of words in the author's free speech. I was also drunk. Let me explain the reason why the update time has been unstable recently. I have received a lot of love from everyone recently. I didn't complain about the unstable update time in the book review section. I am really grateful to everyone. First of all, it's because I update quickly, so I have an instinctive resistance to code words now, but I'm already working hard to adjust, and I believe I will soon be back to my previous passion for code words, dears. Secondly, returning to my hometown slowed down my progress, causing me to lose my previous life of coding and saving manuscripts one day in advance. I will also adjust back as soon as possible. The last and most important thing is that the author is looking at a house recently. After all, it is a lifetime event, and I don't dare to be careless. Therefore, I run out every day, so I wasted a lot of time. I almost went out in the morning and came back in the afternoon. I will code the first update a day in advance, but I will put off the next few updates. Thank you everyone for your tolerance. I will try my best to restore the previous on-time updates as soon as possible. In addition, I will reread the story to correct typos when I have nothing to do, probably in the next year. Everyone who has always supported me. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 455. Lily originally guessed that the young man might be the famous Prince Wolsson in the school, but it was not until she heard Chi Tao call him Basil that she finally confirmed her guess. Basil Wolsson, the crown prince of a certain European country, although he has a name in the school, he doesn't actually appear on campus very often. However, almost everyone in the school knows his name and has only seen his face. Phew. When Chi Tao didn't get an answer from the young man, he didn't get angry. Instead, he asked again. In fact, Bai Ziu and Bai Ziu seemed to be accustomed to the young man's character. They were not surprised by Chi Tao's neglect. On the contrary, they were both surprised. He leaned towards the young man. I'm here to wait for Ms. Zhu. What were you talking about with Ms. Zhu just now? Basil looked at Lily and then asked Chi Tao, I haven't been to school for a long time, but I didn't know you had new friends. I'm really rude. The new friend he was referring to was Yu Liangxin. Chi Tao and the others understood it immediately, and their faces turned a little red, as if they didn't want to admit it. Is there anything else? Basil smiled slightly and didn't take it seriously when Chi Tao didn't speak. His delicate eyebrows just wrinkled slightly, and then he stretched out his hand towards Lily. I hope I have this to send the lady home right. Basil may seem gentle, but he is strong in his heart. Although he is speaking words of inquiry, he is reaching out to Lily. Such a person is more difficult to deal with than someone like Chi Tao who is superficially strong. But it was an indisputable fact that he helped her out at this time. Lily thought for a while and put her fingertips on his palm. Basil chuckled and lowered his head to touch the back of her hand. His lips were soft and cold, and the contact at that moment made Lily's scalp tingle. She turned back and looked at Chi Tao and the others seriously, and told lies with her eyes open. Mr. Chi, I don't know where I was that day you mentioned. I think if I wasn't in the office, I must have been on my way back to the office. What she said was not false. She was indeed waiting that day. After they finished their work, they left her to go back to the office. Chi Tao obviously didn't believe her. But when he saw Basil beside him, his eyes showed vigilance, and finally he pretended to smile casually and stepped aside. I seem to have helped Ms. Zhu out of trouble again. I heard that there is an old saying in China, which is that nothing can be repaid. I promise you with my life. Basil took Lily's hand and did not let go. Instead, he tilted his head and looked at her with a smile. Every frown and smile seemed to be filled with sunshine, and a pair of blue eyes were so gentle that they could drip water when looking at people. Lily felt that the eyes of several people behind her were staring closely at her, and she was a little wary. Hearing Basil's words, he couldn't help but laugh. Then sir, you must have never heard of a Chinese saying, which is that no thanks can be given for a great favor. Lily thought Basil was joking with her now. He replied jokingly. Basil didn't say anything, his eyelids drooped. The fingers holding her hand moved slightly at that moment, as if he wanted to instinctively hold on, and finally let go. It's a bit rude to say that I have met the lady several times. But I have never introduced myself. My name is Basil Watson. It's an honor to meet the lady. Basil let go of Lily's hand, and solemnly covered his chest with one hand and nodded to Lily. Lily nodded. In fact, both parties should know each other's name by now. Basil even knew that the body's surname was Zhu. Lily didn't believe that he hadn't checked his information, but she saw the seriousness on his face at this time. Also introduced his name. What was different from the past was that Basil did not stop the car after going down the mountain. Instead, he sent her back to the downstairs of Zhu's house. I know that the lady has caused some little trouble recently. If there is anything you need my help with, I will be happy to help. He should be referring to Qin Zayanan's matter. Lily's movement to get out of the car suddenly froze. Basil bent over and stood in front of the car door. He opened the car door with one hand and even thoughtfully protected her head with the other hand. Seeing that when Lily was like this, although he didn't explicitly refuse, his attitude was very obvious. Basil was not a fool. He didn't mean to embarrass Lily at this time. On the contrary, he was very gentleman. After coughing twice, he didn't speak again. He smiled and never mentioned it again. Qin Zayanan is indeed a trouble, but avoiding it is not an option when trouble comes to the door, especially when a brainless person like Qin Zayanan never leaves anyone the slightest leeway in doing things. Even if she originally wanted to settle the matter, she would be cornered by Qin Zayanan. She wanted to retreat, but she was at odds with her at the beginning. Lily was no longer prepared to pretend that nothing happened. She had already taken action against Qin Zayanan and had already considered the outcome of her retreat. If it didn't work, she would think of another way. At worst, she would send her parents away first. Just go to a place where Qin Zayanan's father's power cannot reach him. Basil gave her a somewhat old-fashioned feeling. Although he was gentle and considerate, Lily instinctively didn't want to get close to him. She didn't know if it was because she already had a close relationship with Li Yangzi. Maybe even Lily herself couldn't believe it. She seemed to be a little defensive and vigilant towards Basil. Even though she told herself that there was no enmity between her and Basil and that he would not hurt her, the dangerous feeling still lingered around her. It lingered in her mind. Thank you for your reminder. If necessary, I think I will. Lily did not say anything that would definitely ask Basil to help, which caused a dark color to flash through his blue eyes, and the bright eyes flashed for a moment. Everything seemed to have turned a little gray-blue, as if covered with a thin layer of mist, but the next moment he smiled again and nodded. I will look forward to that day. After thanking Basil, Lily returned home. Zhu's father and mother still didn't call back. Lily called her, but it kept reminding her that her phone was turned off. She practiced the star training twice. After the real power in the body washed away the fatigue of the whole day, the sky outside gradually became darker. When Lily took a shower, changed clothes, took money, and went out, the red light district in the north of the city was still the same as yesterday. The women were still sitting, looking bored and impatient. Apparently no one knew that Qin Zayanan was left here by him last night. Lily stood patiently for nearly an hour and found that it really didn't look like these two. After the woman laid suspicion, she entered the store. The guests are here. The two women came up to greet them. Lily lowered her voice and asked, "Where are the two people I sent yesterday?" The two women obviously recognized Lily's voice, and they couldn't help being surprised and happy. Although Lily said yesterday that she would pay the 10,000 yuan again today, after all, 10,000 yuan is not a small amount, so these two women they had too much hope, but for that glimmer of hope, they still prepared a lot according to Lily's instructions. When they saw Lily actually coming, one of the women patted her thigh. He quickly pulled Lily and entered the house. Under the dim light, everything in the house seemed blurry. In addition to a bed, the small room inside also had a TV. When a woman came in, she took a disc and quickly put it into the DVD player. The screen suddenly appeared. The faces of Qin Zayanan and Zhu Ao appeared. These two women had indeed listened to her instructions. In the picture, Zhu Ao and the two were arranged in various ways. The women changed one after another, but I don't know what they ate, but they always maintained an excited and painful state. Lily watched a short section and motioned to a group of women. Fast forward. It turned out that the filming lasted for more than 9 hours, and Qin Zayanan and his wife no longer felt any joy at the end. On the contrary, when he was in pain, when even a woman could no longer get excited after feeding him, the one hugging him would be a man. A total of more than 230 brothers and sisters came to the street yesterday. The guests were generous, so we have divided the 10,000 given yesterday, and I also followed your instructions and kept them until the evening. It was dark just now. It was only then that I threw my girl out, a woman explained carefully. She was deeply afraid that Lily would not believe her. He fast-forwarded the disc again, pointed to the time on it and said, "Guest, please see, this is 21 hours later. If you think the time is short, you can give less." In the camera, the faces of Qin Zayanan and Qin Zayanan were already pale and green, as if they were dead. Lily felt satisfied when she saw it. She knew that the reason why these women threw them away before she came was probably because they were afraid that Qin Zayanan and Qin Zayanan would be there. Someone had an accident and died in the store. If that was the case, the people on the street would be unlucky. Anyway, he had achieved his goal of punishing Qin Zayanan and the two of them. Lily motioned to these people to take out the disc and hand it to her. In his hand, he took out the money he had prepared and left without looking back. The Qin family was peaceful in the next few days. Qin Zayanan didn't know whether he was dead or alive, but there was no news at all in the newspapers. For people like them, no news is actually the biggest news. Lily, it can be guessed that Qin Zayanan must be in a bad state at this time. She later took the disc home and watched it. The two of them were tortured a lot. The group of women used them as targets to vent their anger. Usually it was the guests who tortured them. They, now that the situation has been reversed, can give them a day to vent their anger. Naturally, they can do whatever they want. Even if Qin Zayanan survives this time, his skin will peel off and become waste. Doesn't he like to have people's hands and feet amputated? Doesn't he like to find a group of people to have sex with women? Lily will let him get his wish now. If he wants to cut off his hands and feet, Lily will let him cut off his descendants. He likes to find people to take his turn, and he also lets a group of women take his turn. Currently, Lily is calmly waiting for the Qin family's actions. She has the disc in her hand and has made many copies. If the Qin family wants to harm her, she will not sit still and wait for death. Qin Zayanan will be ruined along with her. But to Lily's expectation, more than a week later, she went to and from get off work as usual, but the Qin family acted as if nothing had happened. No one came to ask her about anything. This situation was very weird. Lily only has one class this morning, and there has been no news from Zhu's father and Zhu's mother for more than a week. Lily has looked at the class schedule and she has no class this afternoon. When she was about to go back to the office, she got her bag and went home. She entered the office. A group of female teachers who usually like to sit outside the hall and chat were standing in the hall nervously, with strange expressions on their faces. When they saw Lily coming back, some of them breathed a sigh of relief. Their faces, there was a look of jealousy and envy on his face. The office that he usually kept closed has now been opened. Two men in black suits are standing at the door. A figure is sitting on his office chair. Although his face is blocked by the computer, there is darkness above his head. The golden hair still made Lily recognize Basil immediately. I wish the teacher is back. A group of female teachers who rarely spoke to Lily on weekdays and ignored her came over, as if they wanted to say something to her, but just glanced at her office. In the end, he suppressed his curiosity and stopped about 3 steps away from her. The corners of Lily's mouth twitched as she was made horrified by the sudden enthusiasm of the teachers. When she entered the office, she saw when Basil was sitting in her seat, the computer in the office was on. With a gentle and serious expression on his face, Lily took a look over and saw Lien gone above. His eyelids suddenly jumped up. He didn't know how long he had been here, but he lost hundreds of points. "Mr. Basil, why are you here?" A group of people outside stared at the office. Basil coughed twice, and one of the big men pulled the office door shut. After blocking the eyes of everyone outside, Basil laughed softly. "Don't be so unfamiliar. I came here to remind you that something happened to Chinzayan," and he supported his chin with both hands. He didn't know if it was because there were no other people around. Basil seemed very relaxed and comfortable. The face that always had a gentle smile on his face seemed to have been blocked out even the sunlight because the middle door of the office was closed. His smile looked a little cold at this moment, and an inexplicable feeling came to Lily's heart. Before she could catch it, she heard the news about Chinzayan's accident. It was expected that Chinzayan's accident would happen. She was the one who did it. When she did it, she never thought of leaving a way for Chinzayan to escape, so Lily was not surprised at this time. Basil also seemed to know the inside story, looking at her happy smile. He is crazy. He is afraid of women when he sees them. He has been sent abroad for psychological treatment. His father's family used a private plane to pick him up last night. Lily didn't say anything, her expression was very calm, but Basil stood up, put his hands on the table, took a few steps with his slender legs and stood in front of Lily, got closer to her and stared at her condescendingly. "Dear, yes, I think you may need my help." What he said was an affirmation rather than a question. The corners of Lily's mouth moved, but Basil was not as gentlemanly and polite as before. Instead, he reached out and touched her head, coldly. When the palm of his hand fell on her forehead, the cold made Lily shiver instinctively. This was not just the coldness of her body, but also the instinctive feeling coming from the deepest part of her soul. There was a bit of confusion in Basil's eyes, and the corner of his mouth. "The smile is still gentle. That disc of yours can't protect you, nor can it protect your parents." His voice became softer, with a look of fascination on his face. He touched Lily's palm with a slight force, as if he was afraid of breaking it. Like a fragile doll, Lily subconsciously wanted to take a step back, but Basil quickly took a big step and forced her into the corner of the office. "The princess has finally reached the point where she needs the prince's help." He was not as gentle and harmless as he appeared on the surface. For a person of his background, Lily believed that everything he did was not a coincidence, but she didn't understand what attracted his attention. Lily's brow wrinkled. "Mr. Basil, what do you want?" Lily didn't ask Basil what he wanted to do, but asked him what he wanted. Although the questions sounded similar, Lily's words made Basil laugh softly. "Smart girl, I want you." He was talking like ambiguous words between lovers, but what was revealed in his eyes was not lust but a kind of fanaticism that made people feel a little uncomfortable. Lily only felt a chill rising from the soles of her feet, and she felt when there was some pressure. Basil retreated and returned to his previous polite gentleman appearance. "I'm sorry, I just want to tell you that Chinzayan's father's family will not cause you any more trouble." Basil no longer showed the same dangerous expression as before, and at this time, Basil returned to his gentle expression with a smile, but Lily's whole body was tense and unable to relax at all. "I originally hoped to have lunch with a beautiful lady. I wonder if she would like a compliment." Basil seemed not to have noticed Lily's wary body language at this moment, and asked with a smile, seeing that Lily was silent and didn't speak. After that, he sighed with regret, but the expression on his face remained unchanged. Then at least please give me a chance to send the lady home. Lily looked at him with a gentle look on his face, and his blue eyes seemed to be filled with bright sunshine, as blue as the ocean. When Lily looked at him, he was also smiling and staring down at Lily, with a reserved expression and a gentle expression. Lily was silent for a while, then quickly packed up her things and nodded. Of course, thank you for your help. She didn't care what Basil wanted, but she had a hunch that the prince, who had the lowest presence in the plot, it will be the most difficult person in her mission, but she can take it one step at a time. The matter between her and Chinzayanan can't be affected to the point of wishing her father and mother a blessing. It's a good thing to have Basil's help. Although this person doesn't seem to be easy to deal with, no matter how difficult he is no longer in Lily's eyes at this time. Other options. Basil didn't have lunch with her after sending her down the mountain. It turned out that the prince fell asleep inexplicably not long after he went down the mountain. The housekeeper sitting in front of the car looked at her reproachfully, and then Lily, I know that the reason why Basil doesn't appear often in Zubayhi's impression in the plot is because he suffers from an inexplicable disease. The disease was weakening his body's internal organs and functions, leaving him with less than a few years to live. He leaned quietly in Lily's arms, as if Snow White in the fairy tale fell into a deep sleep after eating her stepmother's poisoned apple. The eyelids blocked his blue eyes that were so blue that Lily was a little scared. He was now only then did ER's pale cheeks really show some tenderness. The traffic police quickly separated the vehicles on the originally crowded road. The car drove smoothly all the way to the place where Watson lived temporarily in Huaxia. Lily was embarrassed to say that she had to get out of the car first. Basil leaned on her until they arrived at the property of the Watson family. A group of people had already arrived. People in white coats who had been prepared in advance came out and carried Basil out of the car, and Lily watched him being taken away. It wasn't until 2 hours later that the butler-looking man next to Basil came out, apologized to Lily, and then arranged a car to take her away. When returning home, Zhu's father and Zhu's mother, who had been out for nearly half a month, also came back, but this trip was not pleasant. Both of the couple's eyes were red and swollen. When they saw their daughter coming back, they both couldn't help crying. Ziahi, we found the child from before, but now she may not be alive anymore. This time the couple returned to the place where they taught when they went to the countryside. In the early years, they taught for free in the countryside because they did not need wages. Children read. Therefore, Zhu's father and Zhu's mother have a very good reputation in the local area. Many people still remember them when they go back more than 10 years later. I heard that when Zhu's father and Zhu's mother's child was born and was carried by the wrong person, many people in the village ate it. Surprised, the couple visited for several days, checked information, and asked the doctors and nurses at the rural clinic. It took them 5 days to identify several families where the child was born on the same day as Zhu's mother. At first, because they were not sure which one was their real child, and there was no place in the countryside that could test DNA certificates, Zhu's father and mother could only go door to door to beg these people's children to have their children's blood types checked. They all said that they were not wrong, and after finding out, they wished their parents good luck. Among the 5 children born on that day, except for one Zhuao, 2 of the other 4 children were not of type O blood, and only one she has type O blood, and the other girl died due to miscarriage after getting married 6 months ago. Zhu's mother originally suspected that the child with type O blood was her own flesh and blood. After all, because the Zhuao she gave birth to was a boy by mistake, she never thought that the child she gave birth to was a girl, so she initially married that child off. The girl who later died in miscarriage was excluded, but the boy looked very similar to his parents, but had no resemblance to Zhu's father and mother, not to mention that his mother had been awake when the child was born. Had not left their eyes, so it was unlikely that they had held her by mistake. the couple had to begin to doubt the girl who the villagers said died in childbirth 6 months after getting married. It is said that because this child is a daughter, she is not liked by her parents at home. She has been beaten and scolded since she was a child. A year ago, when she was less than 15, her father gave her 5,000 yuan to a man in the mountains next door because she was older. As for the wife of a man who could not marry a daughter-in-law, she was beaten violently by her husband less than 5 months into her pregnancy. In the end, she gave birth to a miscarriage. Because of the backward medical technology in the mountainous area, 1 person died and 2 people died. When Zhu's mother heard the news, the whole person felt a little bad, and the girl's parents refused to admit it at first. It was not until Zhu's father got anxious that the 2 couples reluctantly told the truth. It turns out that people in the countryside were poor, but they liked sons, so the couple already had 2 sons and a daughter before giving birth to Zhuao. When the wife gave birth to a son, the couple were actually happy, but the family was too busy. They are poor, and even if they have a son, the family cannot provide for them. They want their son to live a good life, and hope that when he grows up, he can live in the city, marry a wife and have children. They heard that Zhu's mother also gave birth to a daughter. At that time, the couple had a brief discussion and decided to exchange their son for the daughter of the Zhu family. In their opinion, what Zhu's mother gave birth to was just a little girl, and she could not carry on the family line. In the future, the property will only be divided between the 2 couples. It is better to give them a son so that when they die, someone will inherit the ancestral name, and his son can also inherit everything of the Zhu family, so that he can live a good life in the future. It would be much better to let him follow his family and live his whole life in a poor ravine. Because of this idea, the couple did not feel they owed their father and mother. At that time, the children were exchanged while there were few people in the clinic. Sure enough, no one discovered the matter. After the child was exchanged, the parents thought that they had exchanged a son for a money-losing product, and they always felt that they had suffered a loss. Therefore, they felt a little displeased every day when they saw the daughter they had exchanged. He was either beaten or scolded, and he was very disgusted. The child almost had problems in the end. It happened that the second son of the family was still short of the bride price when he got married, so the parents married off their daughter, who was not their own flesh and blood, in exchange for 5,000 yuan to give their son a wife. After saying this, the 2 couples did not feel that they had done anything wrong. Instead, they thought that they had done a good thing and that they had given Zhu's father and Zhu's mother a son. Otherwise, they would have lost their children and grandchildren long ago. When they heard the news that their own flesh and blood had died, Zhu's father and Zhu's mother almost collapsed. Hearing the confident words of the couple again, looking at their honest and frightened faces, it seemed as if Zhu's father and Zhu's mother were taking advantage of their power to bully others. Zhu's father was so angry that he almost had a heart attack. This incident was very violent. Zhu's mother immediately reported the case to the local police. She originally thought that the child was accidentally carried by the wrong person, but she thought that her child might suffer in the countryside. But she didn't expect that someone had premeditated this, and she thought that she had raised a son for the enemy who killed her daughter for so many years. Now that she has raised a son who is still a white-eyed wolf, Zhu's mother was so angry that she wanted to fight with the couple on the spot. The local police intervened and arrested the 2 couples on charges of human trafficking, and also arrested the old man who beat his wife to death. Because Zhu's father and Zhu's mother wanted to avenge their daughter who died young, they came back late this time. Somewhat. Lily looked at the 2 couples who seemed to have aged dozens of years in an instant, and sighed in her heart, while comforting them a few words. "Where's that bitch Zhuao?" Zhu's father was silent for a long time. Listening to his wife talking about the experience along the way, he wiped his tears aside and asked fiercely after a long while. Although the family's misfortune is not as serious as his wife and children, logically Zhu's father should not express his anger at this time, but now Zhu's father thinks of Zhu Ao's biological parents and wants to eat Zhu Ao alive. They can't bear it. After adopting a person like Zhu Ao, they plan to revoke their parent-child relationship with Zhu Ao after they came back. Lily did not stop them from this point. If they could separate their relationship with Zhu Ao and live their own lives from now on, Zhu Lily, your wish is fulfilled. Just when all the procedures were completed, Zhu Ao, who had not shown up since Beihi's plastic surgery, appeared 2 days later. He left shortly after Beihi went out with his hands wrapped around his bag. He also knew that he had gone back to Qinzayanan to have Beihi's surgery last time. If Lily saw what happened, she would definitely not let him go, so he waited for Lily to leave before going upstairs. He now had a look of desolation on his face, his eye sockets were dark, and he was hanging up with gauze with one hand. With plywood tied on top, Zhu's mother almost failed to recognize him when he came back and knocked on the door. "Mom, I'm hungry." Zhu Ao suffered a lot of grievances during this trip. He and Qinzayanan got into trouble for no reason at first, and then he was arrested by the Qin family and tortured about what happened that day, but he himself didn't know what happened that day. Unable to tell, he was also beaten unconscious that day, not to mention that he was also treated the same as Qinzayanan. Although Zhu Ao was fierce in front of the Zhu family, he was only a boy under the age of 16 after all, so naturally after he was so frightened that he couldn't answer any questions, the Qin family members beat him up, broke one of his hands, and finally let him go inexplicably. After being imprisoned for a few days, Zhu Ao didn't even dare to go home. He finally stayed at the home of a classmate he was familiar with for a few days to avoid the limelight. He made sure that no one from the Qin family came to find him before returning to Zhu's home. At this moment, when Zhu's mother saw him, she subconsciously shouted that she was hungry. When she saw that he was a new grudge and an old grudge, she slapped him in the face without thinking and rushed into the kitchen to get a kitchen knife like crazy. Zhu Ao had never seen Zhu's mother, who was always gentle and kind to him, like this. He was so frightened that he didn't even care about being hungry. He turned around and dragged a leg that was still difficult to walk, and ran away with curses in his mouth. Probably in order not to affect Lily's mood, Zhu's father and mother did not tell their daughter about this. However, after being disgusted by Zhu Ao, the couple was so angry that they could not speak for a long time. Lily hasn't left the classroom door after finishing a class at school. He was blocked at the door of the classroom by Yu Liangzin with a serious look on his face. "Lily, have you seen Ao? Aren't you worried that he has disappeared for so many days?" Yu Liangzin had been keeping in touch with Zhu Ao, but more than half a month ago, Zhu Ao's phone suddenly became unreachable. Yu Liangzin originally thought that Zhu Ao's mobile phone had been confiscated after he returned home, so he did not call her. Keeping this in mind, the prince's interest in Yu Liangzin seems to have suddenly cooled down recently, seemingly since Basil showed up last time. The princess probably disliked being with Yu Liangzin and lowered her standards. Recently, she had very little time to see her. Yu Liangzin began to feel a little relieved. When she originally felt a little secretly happy, unexpectedly, someone in the school the people started to punish her. The students who seemed innocent and lovely to her in the past made her miserable, and sometimes some pranks made her unbearable and made her want to cry. She thought she was loyal to the sun and the moon, but the students didn't appreciate it at all. The more Yu Liangzin thought about it, the more she felt aggrieved. When she was with the three princes, a group of students would seriously avoid her when they saw her. No one dares to mess with her. Although the teachers ignored her when they saw her, at least no one dared to play a prank on her. But now that the princes stopped torturing her, Yu Liangzin originally decided to forget about it and start her new life again, but later she realized that staying in this aristocratic school was a test of one's will. It's a matter of strength. Many people here don't buy her account. She originally wanted to do the best for the students, but if she said a few more words, a group of students wouldn't give her as much face as before. Yu Liangzin feels very uncomfortable these days, especially because Basil went back to Lily's office last time. Basil is different from Chi Tao and the other three. He is a real prince. Although he is elusive in the school, his fame and influence have not diminished at all. After he went to Lily's office, the people in the school who used to disdain Lily suddenly disappeared. Zi changed his attitude and became respectful to Lily. No one dared to make trouble during Lily's class. Even those who didn't listen carefully would not make any noise. In comparison, the two of them were friends and both were ordinary. Lily was born as a commoner, but now her status is much higher than hers. If the three princes hadn't lifted Yu Lian's heart up high in the past, I'm afraid she wouldn't feel so lost at this time. But when she saw that Zhu Lily, who used to be inferior to her and was even jealous of her, had now become the object of her jealousy, Yu Liangzin suddenly felt unpleasant. She had not appeared in front of Lily for a long time, because she has her own backbone and doesn't want Lily to laugh at her. She always feels that she has suffered a lot. She is a conservative person, but in the end she was betrayed by three men. She had sacrificed so much, but now she was betrayed. People are treated like playthings and thrown away after use. Yu Liangzin can't describe how she feels. What's more, the Basil she saw that day was better than Chi Tao and others in terms of demeanor and demeanor. The gentleness in his movements was like sunshine shining into her heart. Why were they all the same princes? The three princes used her as a plaything. Now that they are thrown away after use, Lily can meet such a gentle prince, and now she is using his reputation to make the students respect her in the school. Yu Liangzin knew that her thoughts were very bad, and she suppressed them with force. But when her jealousy arose, she couldn't control herself at all, so she didn't dare to appear in front of Lily. At this moment, she felt inferior and a little nervous. Resentment, if it hadn't been for something today, she wouldn't have wanted to come to see Beihe. She was now like Zhu Beihe in the plot. She felt similar after knowing that her idol was with Yu Liangzin, but Yu Liangzin didn't like Zhu Beihe, who could find excuses to vent her anger to prevent her brother from falling in love with her. Yu Liangzin had no excuse to make trouble with Lily, so she had to endure the depression and discomfort in her heart. But today she actually received a text message from Zhu Ao. Zhu Ao took a picture of himself and gave it to her, and also talked about his current situation in the text message. Yu Liangzin suddenly felt that the justice in her heart had been awakened, and she didn't even think about it at the moment. I came to look for Lily. Look, this is your brother. How can you bear to beat him like this? Ziahe, I used to think that although you were a little vain and had a bad temper, I always thought you could do a good job. Girl, I didn't expect you to be so vicious. Look, Aao is asking me to borrow money because he hasn't eaten for more than 2 days, and he is your brother, Yu Liangzin said. Tears fell down like broken beads. Lily glanced at the text message. The above is probably about Zhu Ao asking Yu Liangzin to borrow money, and explaining that he was beaten and now homeless. He also said that his parents were angry with him and kicked him out of the house, and begged Yu Liangzin to take him in. When she saw Zhu Ao's haggard and miserable face, Lily felt an uncontrollable feeling of joy in her heart. Next to her, Yu Liangzin was still crying, talking about how pitiful Zhu Ao was, which made Lily feel in her heart. Annoyed, get out of here. Yu Liangzin didn't seem to expect that she would be so direct when she heard Lily's words. She looked timid and confused, and when she came to her senses, someone next to her burst out laughing. Yu Liangzin turned her head to look, because when Lily just came out, it happened to be the end of get out of class, and she blocked Lily again. At the classroom door, a bunch of people were standing in the classroom watching her quarrel with Lily. Even if Yu Liangzin could endure her cowardice, she couldn't help but feel her face turn red. She saw that the person who laughed was exactly after the daughter of a city councillor who was usually the most arrogant in the class. Yulian felt new and old hatreds welling up at the same time. When she was with the three princes. When these classmates saw her, they all nodded and bowed. Now Chizo and others haven't come to see her for only a few days. A group of people fall out faster than flipping through a book. In the past, Chi Tao and the other three princes had a large number of fans in school because of their different looks and status. This congressman's daughter was one of Chi Tao's fans and the president of Prince Chi Tao's fan club. After Yu Liangxin was dumped, I'm afraid she was the happiest. Sometimes she would trip up Yu Lian's heart several times a day, and now she was laughing at her in front of so many people. Yu Liangxin suddenly felt an inexplicable anger. Originally, she was just a little teacher, and she just wanted to teach well. She asked her senior to introduce her to this aristocratic school just to earn more money and send it back to the orphanage. She was kind and thought that she had never done anything sorry to others, but why should others bully her? She was raised by her parents, and all living beings are equal. Why should others look down on her? All of these people are rich, but they refuse to donate money to the orphanage, preferring to spend extravagantly. Now they don't regard themselves as human beings. A surge of anger arose in Yu Lian's heart, and evil grew from his courage. He stammered and said, "Student Lu, have you finished the homework I asked you to do this morning?" She tried her best to straighten her chest and pretend to be a teacher, but she was subconsciously staring at Lily from the corner of her eye. If it was in the past when the three princes obviously told others not to bully her, if she had said such words, the city councillor Jianjin would have swallowed her anger forcibly no matter how dissatisfied she was. But what does Yu Liangxin mean at this time? The girl sneered and handed her bag to an acquaintance next to her. Then he strode forward, grabbed her hair, and slapped her across the face. "Bah! What are you doing? I'm really taking you for granted. He's a personal character, he's just someone else's plaything, and he's still someone who gets tired of being played with." As soon as she said these words, Yu Liangxin felt as if she had been stripped naked in public. She didn't expect anyone else to know about what happened between her and the three princes, and she almost went crazy. She covered her face uneasily and glanced around. People around her looked at her and sneered. Obviously, many people were well aware of the affairs between her and the princes. After all, it was obviously abnormal for the three princes to pay too much attention to a civilian teacher in the past. In addition, Yu Liangxin was often called into the student union, and when she came out, her legs were so weak that she could not walk. Lily would be lucky. I met them twice in the school toilet. There is no guarantee that other people may have met them, but others did not dare to speak directly due to the status of Chizo and others. But Yu Liangxin always thought that only she knew about this matter. She was originally a conservative woman, and she originally wanted to keep that layer of membrane to contribute to her husband when she got married. Unexpectedly, it was taken away by someone else by accident. Now that she was with three men at the same time, it was known to others, and she was scolded by others. When Yu Liangxin heard this, she finally couldn't bear it anymore, and she didn't care that Zuao was still sending text messages asking for her. I asked her to borrow money. She covered her face and shed tears silently, and ran away quickly, apparently towards the student council president's office. Yu Liangxin was asking for humiliation. Lily had no sympathy for her at all. Originally, women should be pitied when such things happened, but it was not like she had no chance to escape. She succumbed to the lustful power of those people again and again. She accepted gifts from others and still works in the school here. Regardless of whether her purpose of working here is to earn more money to support the orphanage, it proves that she has accepted this fact. This happens by default. In the afternoon, Lily heard the teachers outside the office talking about how Yu Liangxin rushed into the student council president's office and slapped one of the princes, Chi Tao. Unlike the original owner, Lily was not keen on getting close to these teachers. And she didn't always try hard to squeeze into this group of people like the original owner. But I don't know if she has calmed down now, or because Basil had been here before, but this group of female teachers accepted her. I'm happy to tell her the news. Although Yu Liangzin was thrown out naked after beating Chi Tao, the incident was more than that. The son of the school director was slapped with a plaything. This simply made the superior person feel as if he was offended. The principal immediately wanted to fire Yu Liangzin. Yu Liangzin was still dissatisfied and wanted to reason. When Lily was about to go home from get off work, she saw Yu Liangzin's cheeks were red and swollen. Standing in front of the principal's office with a stubborn face, he wanted to seek justice from the principal. But there is no absolute justice in this world, especially when she is still in a place where there is a huge disparity between rich and poor. How can there be true fairness? I'm not convinced. I will report this situation to the Labor Bureau. If the school doesn't give me a reasonable explanation, I won't leave, Yu Liangzin kept reasoning when Lily passed by her. She lowered her head and her body stiffened for a moment. The principal in the office seemed to have finally been annoyed by her and couldn't bear it anymore. He suddenly opened the door and angrily threw a piece of paper into Yu Liangzin's face. Go away. Explanation. What explanation do you want? What qualifications do you have to teach in our school with nothing special about you? I will also sue you for sneaking into the school in an improper way, with no ulterior motives. Lily has gone far. You can still hear the principal's angry curses, but Yu Liangzin's explanation voice can no longer be heard. Naturally, I didn't hear the cry. The next day I heard that she was kicked out of the school. Originally, the school was going to give her half a year's salary of nearly 200,000 yuan, which was considered a breakup fee given to her by several princes. However, after such a commotion, the school naturally gave up its intention to compensate her. Originally, the princes were somewhat interested in her body, but they just didn't look for her for a few days because of their bad reputation. After all, that day, Basil saw Chi Tao and the others hanging out with Yu Liangzin, and several teenagers were being arrogant and rebellious. At this age, they all feel that although Yu Liangzin's body is indeed delicious, she is a little bit indifferent in terms of status or appearance. It would be fine if she is treated as a plaything for a few people, but a few people are slowly becoming attracted to her. Hard, the adolescent boy was naturally stimulated by Basil's intention, and Yu Liangzin naturally became cold for a few days. If Yu Liangzin had been a little more patient, maybe she could have waited until they really fell in love with her and couldn't live without her. But she couldn't calm down, and was stimulated by the congressman's daughter, and ran to find the princes. Chi Tao and others were originally struggling with the trouble. In addition, the arrogant and face-conscious person was slapped by Yu Liangzin. Naturally, they felt that their self-esteem couldn't stand it, and in their hearts they truly and completely hated Yu Liangzin. And from then on I really gave up my desire to start over with her. 2 months later, when the school was about to go out for summer vacation, Basil, who had not been seen for a long time, reappeared. This time he seemed to be in good spirits, but he seemed to be thinner than before. There seemed to be no trace of blood on his face, and his blue eyes seemed to have lost a bit of their previous brilliance, looking a little dull. When Lily saw him, he was waiting at the school gate, leaning in front of the car, holding a hand in his hand. The scene of reading a book is as if there is a faint shadow of someone on the body, overlapping with the person. Without the presence of Yu Liangzin, Basil returned to school. He began to take advantage of this period to pick Lily up from school from time to time, and occasionally gave her flowers. His thoughts were revealed, and slowly, not only the people in the school knew about the campus. The crown prince of the Middle Walson family was pursuing a teacher named Zhu, and even Zhu's father and mother quickly got the news. Although he didn't want his daughter to marry Hai, Zhu's father liked Basil because of his good looks and politeness. In addition, this person was really capable, so he quickly coaxed Zhu's father and mother into a good marriage. In the end, he was inexplicable. Lily found that she was not only labeled as Basil's girlfriend, but later on, everyone seemed to think that it was natural for her to be with Basil. No one objected, and the legendary Basil's parents did not want to beat the couple. Meaning, although Lily still felt an inexplicable fear of Basil, in the end Lily found that she seemed to have no excuse to refuse Basil. He seemed to be tightly tying her up with a piece of tenderness. Zhu Beihi's wish came to this point to break up with Zhu Ao. Because Zhu Ao is no longer the biological son of the Zhu family, it has naturally come true. Before Zhu Beihi died, he realized not to be vain and just wanted to get someone who would treat her sincerely instead of treating her as a joke. Now Basil has done it, after all. Currently, to Lily, she doesn't look like a joke, but Basil looks more like it, and everyone seems to be saying that he's crazy. I have taken a fancy to a person who comes from an ordinary background and is not outstanding in anything. If he can put down his identity and reach this point, it should be regarded as showing his sincerity. Therefore, when Basil proposed, under the urging of his father and mother, Lily thought for a while and agreed. The wedding was as beautiful as a dream, too good to be true. The newspaper devoted the most space to writing about this myth of a sparrow turning into a phoenix. In the plot, Zhu Beihi tried her best and failed to marry the rich second generation, but in the end Lily fulfilled her wish in the plot that she didn't even dare to think about at first. When the headline news in China for several days was the wedding photos of the two, Zhu Ao, who was already with Yu Liangzin, saw the scene on TV and cursed again. This bitch married a rich man and didn't care about me at all. Why doesn't she die? He cursed angrily, throwing wine bottles all over the floor in the room. Yu Liangzin was silently cleaning up for him, but Zhu Ao grabbed Yu Liangzin without thinking and slapped her hard. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, how would I have done it? Will I have a falling out with my sister? If there had been no falling out, now I would be the prince's brother-in-law, and it's all your fault. Zhu Ao thought of himself back then. At this moment, I wonder why I would get into trouble with Lily because of Yu Liangzin. I had known that Lily might marry a real rich man. If he had known that making money was so difficult, he really shouldn't have fallen out with his family. After he was kicked out of the house and Yu Liangzin was kicked out of school, the two people who both thought they had been hurt slowly came together. After Yu Liangzin lost the income from the aristocratic school, she naturally lost her former self. Because she was weak and not good at rejecting others, Zhu Ao did not have the threat of the three princes when he pursued her, and she did not know how to reject him without hurting Zhu Ao's self-esteem. After saying countless times that the two were friends was useless, Yu Liangzin also acquiesced to the fact that the two were together. And this was not the first time since they got together that Zhu Ao immediately turned his face. The reason why a goddess is because a goddess often exists in a person's imagination. That image is beautiful and a desire. What's not available is that once the goddess falls into the mortal world, she seems to be less valuable. In addition, Yu Liangzin's character is too weak. When Zhu Ao hit her for the first time, because it was not the first time, she honestly told the story about herself and the three princes. When Zhu Ao cried and begged her again, she forgave Zhu Ao in her heart. As time went on, Zhu Ao naturally looked down on her more and more. Anyway, as long as he beats her and cries a few times, she will still stay by his side. What is there to cherish about such a person? At this time, Yu Liangzin covered her burning and painful face. Seeing the regretful look in Zhu Ao's eyes, she endured her grievances and comforted him with a few words, feeling sour in her heart. She and Zhu Beihi were both civilian teachers in the same school. She was even taller than Zhu Beihi at the beginning, but she didn't expect that her first time would be taken away by three princes. Not to mention her status, no one even dared to admit that she was the girlfriend of several people, and now she was reduced to being with Zhu Ao. However, Zhu Beihi also came from an ordinary family. She met a noble prince and became a woman from then on. Not only did she marry the princess, but she still married into a wealthy family. When Yu Liangzin thought about this, she felt really unwilling to accept it, and she also felt a little bit resentful about her current status. But after Lily, who was envied by her, finished her wedding with Basil, Basil came over gently and stabbed her with something unknown, and Lily felt something was wrong. Her originally thin eyelids slowly began to feel heavy. Even if she started to use her internal strength to drive away the sudden feeling of drowsiness, she still couldn't. Bail, Lily's body came softly close to Basil's arms. He still looked as gentle as before, with a pair of blue eyes that were so soft that they were almost dripping with water. Huh? Have a good sleep, and you'll be fine soon. Of. What did you do to me? Lily felt herself being picked up by him, and Basil held her horizontally in his arms. When he heard her asking this question, he tilted his head and glanced at her, his expression gentle and a bit sad, but his clear eyes were a bit cold. Ziahe, do you know? I'm most afraid of looking into your eyes every time. He has always been gentle. When he is in front of her, he not only speaks softly, but also has a smile on his lips when he speaks. He seemed to be born to smile. When he smiled, it was like the sun was shining on his face, but his blue eyes were so clear. Therefore, he showed a bit of coldness. Lily had always felt that his temperament was a bit like Li Yangzi in a certain aspect. The reason why she had a certain resistance to him and agreed to marry during the mission was because Lily seemed to see Li Yangzi. In general, it's just that he is a gentle and cold Li Yangzi. Li Yangzi in the starry sky would not hurt her, but he would never smile at her gently. She felt wary and defensive, but instinctively felt that if Li Yangzi was such a gentle person, she would want to get close. Once the smile at the corner of Basil's mouth faded away, it was as if his whole temperament had changed, and the warm smile he maintained was no longer in his eyes. He seemed indifferent and extremely cold. I know. You don't want to see my eyes either. You know, sometimes I think you understand me. Basil gently put Lily on the bed. He watched her eyes gradually change color. Her pupils slowly dilated, and her heartbeat began to slow down, but she seemed to refuse to admit defeat. Struggling hard, Basil laughed again. His eyes were filled with sunshine again. I want to get you, but you obviously don't want to get me. You don't like me. You are looking at others through me, which makes me very unhappy. Ziahe, I hope your eyes you can only see me, have me, and notice me. You don't like me, so what should I do if I destroy you? I wasn't willing to do it, but I had to do it because you don't love me, you don't even like me. His voice became softer and softer, as if he was afraid of disturbing Lily, but his tone became heavier and heavier. It would be great if you could only see me, but you are not that kind of person. Of course you are. I don't like people like that anymore, so I have to find a way, you know? I wanted you the first time I saw it, just like a small sword I wanted to collect when I was a child, and asked my father to give it to me for collection. Lily only felt that her limbs and bones were relaxed, and a thick feeling of sleep surrounded her, but she didn't want to sleep. She didn't know what Basil had done to her. He was really careless this time. Although he was still talking to herself gently, but in addition to tenderness in his eyes, there was also something called cruel murderous intent. This feeling was especially obvious when he was not smiling. She always felt that Basil was. She had a strange feeling of fear. Only then did she realize that there was something unclear about him. She didn't expect that she would be in trouble this time. She tried hard to bite her tongue to wake herself up, but Basil pinched her face and frowned. I don't like you hurting yourself. Have a good sleep. After you sleep, nothing will happen. I won't bear to hurt you. How can I bear to hurt you? You are my collection that will accompany me for a lifetime. I will keep it in the future. Together forever, Basil said, coughing twice. I won't live long, but I can't bear that if I die, you will still be alive, and you will see so many people and things in your eyes. I want you to stay with me. Don't worry, the things I give you are the best. We will always be together in the future, even death cannot separate us. As he spoke, Basil began to softly read something like a poem in a language that Lily could not understand. At this time, his expression was gentle and holy, as if he was not contaminated by dust. We cannot be together when we are alive, and we will never be together after death. No separation, this is what our country calls a true lover. Ziahi, do you like it? Lily gradually couldn't hear what he said, and she fell into a deep sleep. When she was a little afraid that she might never wake up again, and from now on, not only would her life end at this moment during this mission, but also in the past. When she couldn't return to the starry sky, she seemed to have been taken out of her body. Lily was panicked and saw Li Yangzi's gloomy expression. She was half hugged in Li Yangzi's arms. The cold feeling all over her body suddenly faded away, and Lily couldn't bear it. He couldn't help but hug Li Yangzi. Now he felt scared after his backer appeared, and started shaking in his arms. It's okay, don't be afraid. When Li Yangzi's cold voice sounded, Lily thought of Basil's gentle and smiling words before, and felt more and more that Li Yangzi was reliable. She responded softly and leaned her head gently on his chest near the collarbone. Where she was, she felt Li Yangzi's chin rubbing against her head. This silent comfort quickly calmed down her frightened heart. Li Yangzi's breath surrounded her whole body. Lily's, after feeling safe for a while, she began to turn her head to look at the scene indoors. Basil should not have been able to feel Li Yangzi after he appeared here, but for some reason, when he appeared, Basil seemed to have noticed something. He frowned and began to look around the empty room. Zubayhi was on the bed. Her body had stopped breathing long ago. She was taken care of very beautifully, and there was no ferocious condition after her death. Her cheeks even had a soft blush like a drunk person, and she just seemed to be asleep. Basil walked around the room and finally stopped at the place where Li Yangzi was standing, but he found nothing, so he returned to the big bed in vain. He carefully combed Zhu Lily's hair. She put on makeup with a delicate expression, as if the husband of a beloved wife was patiently dressing her up. Seeing his gentle expression, Lily couldn't help but feel creepy all over. She had seen a lot of perverted people, but there were not many perverts like Basil. Li Yangzi didn't leave for some reason. He just hugged Lily and looked at Basil silently. What he did, he frowned. This time he miscalculated. One of the 7 emotions, which he thought he could take back as smoothly as before, unexpectedly resisted returning to the main body. He could take it back forcibly, but the end result might be the same as before when he merged with Ye Changjin. Li Yangzi looked cold. He looked at the scene in front of him coldly for a long time, then looked at Lily's green and white complexion, and finally sighed silently. He still couldn't bear to see her resisting, and finally took her back to the starry sky. After the two left this mission world, the next day in Basil's country, news emerged that the crown princess had unfortunately been killed in a car accident. When the myth of a commoner bride marrying a prince was shattered in everyone's eyes within a few days, the prince did not forget the meaning of the crown princess. He publicly made it clear that he would take care of Lily for the rest of his life, and would never do it again in this life. Marry. Such deep affection made countless girls secretly grit their teeth that the girl he liked was not them. After that, Basil really had a deep love for his deceased wife. When Basil died of illness a few years ago, the king ordered someone to quietly keep him with him. Best wishes for Lily to be cremated together. This is his wish. Only when their bodies are reduced to ashes, even the magical pigeons in fairy tales who are good at picking beans from ashes cannot save them. Basil is only satisfied when it is completely separated. In other people's eyes, the prince missed his beloved wife and died young. Everyone sighed that Zhu Lily got such a beloved person and was jealous of her who had died long ago. Even Zhu Lily's parents thought that their daughter had no regrets in this life. At that time, all the truth was hidden in fairy tale-like legends. There is a kind of gentleness that can actually be cruel. To be continued. If you like this work, You are welcome to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. Your support is my biggest motivation. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 456. When she followed Li Yangzi back to the starry sky, Lily let out a long sigh of relief. Basil gave her an eerie feeling, especially since he didn't know what he had used on her. Lily was deeply afraid that she would fall asleep before completing her mission. It felt as if I would never wake up again, which was very scary. Although Li Yangzi's expression did not change at this time, Lily could instinctively feel that he was not in a good mood at the moment. There was a bit of gloom in his eyes, and he seemed to be somewhat similar to Basil in the previous plot. After returning to the starry sky, Li Yangzi let her go and reached out to touch her cheek. Are you scared? She was indeed a little frightened. Lily was still a little frightened at the moment. When she heard Li Yangzi's words, she nodded instinctively. A slight smile appeared on the corner of Li Yangzi's mouth, and then he quickly regained his composure. Don't worry, as long as I'm here, what's there to be afraid of? Lily tilted her head and looked at him. He had a cold expression on his face, as if what he just said was a matter of course. He looked down at the world with a scornful tone, and there was no ups and downs in his tone. Even though he tilted his face, he looked back at Lily. His perfect and delicate side face showed smooth lines due to his movements, and the eyebrow on the right side was slightly raised, as if I was wondering why she felt so scared. The two had been so close, but Li Yangzi had never said any touching words of love to her. Lily had never cared about him before. She couldn't imagine that someone like Li Yangzi would say any touching words of love. But now he said things so that he didn't have to be afraid with a matter-of-fact expression. Lily felt caring and stable for no reason. You haven't told me before, there's no need to be afraid. Although Lily still felt hairy all over when she remembered the feeling when Basil inexplicably attacked her, but now that Li Yangzi was by her side, it seemed that the thought of Basil was no longer so scary. After all, he is just one of the mission targets in the plot. Since Li Yangzi said that there is no need to be afraid of him, he somehow believes in him. When Li Yangzi heard what she said, his eyes flickered, and he turned his face away and looked in another direction. Although he still looked calm and elegant at the moment, the corners of his mouth could not be controlled and raised upwards. When Lily said this, her voice was murmuring, as if she was coquettish. This was the first time Li Yangzi heard it. She spoke to herself in such a tone, and the feeling was very fresh. Hearing this, Li Yangzi was elated. Although he was scheming and had successfully plotted Lily, at this moment he really had the feeling that the seeds he had planted were about to bear fruit, even though he had never practiced in the subject of relationships. But now it turns out that a genius like him, who was originally called an unparalleled genius by the elders, indeed has unique advantages in pursuing strength and power. Even in the matter of men and women, he is still far superior to those with mediocre qualifications. You haven't asked me before. Li Yangzi put aside the matter of Basil at this time. Although his gentleness is unwilling to return at the moment, one day he will still be able to take back the 7 emotions. He has taken back 3 of them now. When he takes back the remaining 3, no matter how difficult it is to deal with the remaining Basil, after his strength has returned to 70% to 80% of its peak, erasing his sense of independence. Returning it to its original form is still a trivial matter. At this time, for Li Yangzi, it was more important to get along with Lily. Lily heard Li Yangzi's words of assurance. I felt happy for a while, then suddenly thought again, is my mission completed this time? Although Li Yangzi directly came forward to rescue her this time, Lily didn't know whether Zhu Lily's wish was fulfilled. In Lily's opinion, generally such a task should be considered completed when she should take care of Zhu Lily's parents until they grow old. But this time, due to special reasons, she was killed by Basil, so the mission was naturally interrupted. Lily was very grateful that Li Yangzi could save her once, but she did not want to rely on Li Yangzi's help to complete all her missions in the future. The mission is completed, Zhu Lily's wish has been achieved. Although there was a little accident this time, Lily found out for Zhu Lily the reason why Zhu Ao was not her biological brother, so Zhu Lily was actually satisfied at that moment, coupled with the fact that Lily later used her identity to marry Basil in the mission, allowing her to accomplish something that Zhu Lily had never dared to think about in the plot, although it was different from Zhu Lily's wish to marry an ordinary man. Same, but Zhu Lily was still satisfied. When Li Yangzi said this, the information about Lily in the starry sky appeared. Gender, female, variable. Name, Lily. Age, 21. Intelligence, 83, out of 100. Appearance, 88, out of 100. Physical strength, 75, 100 full points. Force, 49, out of 100 points. Spirit, 75, out of 100 points. Reputation, 41, out of 100 points. Skills, 9 Yang Manual, 9 Yin Manual, Heaven and Earth Gate Tao Te Ching, Southern Gu Technique, Star Body Training Technique. Specialties, Advanced Cooking Skills, Advanced Acting Skills, 5 Elements, and Bagua, slightly dabbled in. Charisma, 64, out of 100. Mark, Royal True Dragon Spirit. After the mission was completed, Lily breathed a sigh of relief. Due to the psychological shadow given to her by Basil after the mission was completed, she instinctively felt that it was safest to stay with Li Yangzi, so she stayed in the starry sky for a long time. It wasn't until she slowly adjusted herself that Li Yangzi sent her into the mission again. He Niang, you want to be more liberal. Prince Cheng, how can we afford to offend you? You silly girl, why did you bring so much trouble into the palace? I don't know if it was because her mental power was slowly increasing, but Lily quickly came to the palace. After waking up in a strange environment, she opened her eyes and saw a woman in her 30s, wearing vermilion clothes and wearing a flat forehead, sitting by the bed and watching her cry. Lily subconsciously reached out and touched her. With a face, tears were still oozing out of her eyes at this moment, and a feeling of sadness rising from her heart quickly overwhelmed her whole body. Lily had not felt this feeling of being controlled by the original owner for a long time after her mental power increased, but now it seemed that there was huge sadness hidden in the original owner's heart. Tears kept flowing out. She pursed her lips and said nothing. Through her misty tearful eyes, Lily saw the red wedding robe she was wearing, and her brows furrowed slightly. Seeing that she didn't speak, the woman cried even more sadly. Suddenly she reached out and hugged her tightly, shouting in pain, "My poor daughter. It's okay, Mom, I'm okay." Lily comforted her. But her voice was shaking violently, as if there was a dull knife cutting flesh between her chest. The pain was heartbreaking. The woman kept talking about a destined marriage and the word King Cheng. Lily listened. Even more baffling. When the word marriage rang in her ears, a figure flashed vaguely in her mind, but it was so fast that she couldn't catch it. When she heard the name King Cheng, she felt resentment from the bottom of her heart. But it made her wish she could scream loudly at this moment. The woman comforted her for a while, and then saw that Lily just cried and didn't speak. Shaking his head and sighing. "Mom knows you have a strong temper, but things have come to this. Prince Cheng has already married Meng Qiqui. If you want revenge, let's figure it out later. Why do you have to enter the palace?" When Bei heard the word enter the palace, she cried even more sadly. She could barely control the painful sobs coming out of her mouth. This appearance frightened the woman, who held her and coaxed her for a long time. When Lily slowly died down, the woman ordered someone to come in and twist the veil. After wiping her face, he asked the girl to watch over her and look at the sky outside, letting Lily rest for a while before leaving worriedly. There were still dragon and phoenix candles all around. The original owner was wearing a bright red wedding robe and a heavy phoenix crown on his head. Lily moved her head. She didn't know if her neck had been in the same position for a long time. She wanted to move now. It hurt like a needle pricking, and the fire exploded. Lily stretched out her hand to take off the phoenix crown on her head. The two girls came up and took the things considerately. None of them dared to say a word. Lily took off her clothes. Then she put a handkerchief on her red and swollen eyelids, then lay down on the bed. She closed her eyes and pretended to be sleeping, and began to absorb the plot. A large number of plots flooded into her mind, and the memories of the original owner entered Lily's mind along with her unwillingness and regret. A woman named Lily lived a life of pain and self-blame. Li Beihe was originally from a family in the Wei dynasty that became prosperous after engaging in business and donated a 7th-rank official. She was the eldest daughter of the family. Her parents pampered her very much since she was a child, causing her to be a little flamboyant and proud, but also sometimes she has an overly naive and willful character. Because in her early years, when Li Beihe was not born, Li's father was traveling all over the country to do business, so he didn't care enough about her. Later, when the family became more stable, after donating the wife of a foreign minister, Li's father felt that he had been ashamed of his wife and daughter in his early years, so he doted on his only eldest daughter like the apple of his eye. Li Beihe almost had everything he wanted in Li's family. Even if Li's mother failed to give birth to a son later, Li's father never thought of raising another son to inherit the family business. Instead, he adopted an orphan named Yingxiu out of thousands of choices for his daughter, and prepared for the future. Recruiting a door-to-door son-in-law. Li Beihe grew up with Yingxiu, childhood sweethearts, but she has a spoiled personality. Although she is kind at heart, she can be willful and proud at times. Although Li's father is good for her, a future child adopter was prepared for her, but Li Bai didn't like it. She had only regarded Yingxiu as her eldest brother since she was a child, but Yingxiu, who was 2 years older than her, had always been secretly in love with her. When Li Beihe was 12 years old, she met a girl who sold her body to bury her father when she was out on the street. At that time, she felt sorry for the girl who was homeless and extremely filial. At that time, a group of hooligans were surrounding the girl and teasing her. When the madam in the temple even took a fancy to the girl's beauty and wanted to buy her, Li Beihe couldn't bear the girl being pushed into the fire pit, so he spent money to buy her and let her stay by his side. A maid. Although this girl named Meng Qiui was bought into the house by Li Beihe to be her maid, Li Beihe never treated her harshly. Instead, he always treated her as a sister, and there was never a shortage of good food and fun. She was a share, and even when her parents hired a master to teach her calligraphy, painting etiquette, piano and chess skills, she saw Meng Qiui's eager look, and finally begged her parents to let Meng Qiui stay with her. After learning, when Meng Qiui grew up, she and Li Beihe were closer than biological sisters. The two talked about everything, and sometimes they even slept on the same bed. Their relationship was so good that apart from the fact that Meng Qiui was still a girl in name, the two could hardly tell the difference between master and servant. Under such circumstances, the two little sisters with different surnames grew up slowly. Li Beihe couldn't bear that Meng Qiui would be a slave for the rest of her life, so she asked her parents to adopt Meng Qiui. Li's mother also liked Meng Qiui very much. Compared with Li Beihe's lively personality, this gentle, well-behaved, well-educated girl, Meng Qiui's sensible and knowledgeable girl generally also liked Li's mother. The Li family is even preparing to buy another dowry for Meng Qiui after Li Beihe gets married, and marry her off in a glorious manner as the adopted daughter of the Li family, so that she can be trusted with someone throughout her life and no longer have anyone. The feeling of being under someone else's roof. After knowing the Li family's plans and her sister's plea for her, Meng Qiui swore to the sky and wished she could take out her heart and swear it to Li Beihe. The two agreed to be lifelong friends and never let each other down. If Li Beihe's nemesis hadn't appeared later, maybe the two of them would treat each other sincerely and be sisters for the rest of their lives, just like they swore. When Li Beihe was 15 years old, she rescued an injured young man while out for an outing. The man was covered in blood and was in critical condition. Without knowing the man's identity and background, Li Beihe also knew that men and women were not taught the truth, but although she was a bit more unruly and willful, she still had a kind nature. After seeing that the man might die at any time, she hesitated but rescued the man back to the house. After she informed her parents, Li's family hired a doctor to treat the man's injuries. He left the man in Li's mansion again. When the man woke up, he found that his eyes had been poisoned. "I'm afraid it will take half a year to get better." The man sincerely hoped to stay at Li's house for half a year. He said that his family had fallen into ruin and had nowhere to go. He hoped to stay at Li's house for half a year until he recovered from his injury before leaving. Li's father and mother looked at him and said pitifully. Seeing that he was now blind and homeless, the Li family started a business and had no shortage of food, so they agreed to keep him. The man claimed to be Lu Cheng. After he washed away the blood on his face and the mess on his body, Li Lily discovered that he was very handsome. He had never had any experience with strange men since he was a child, but this man, the handsome Lu Cheng, quickly left a deep impression on Li Beihe, which made her start to feel a little excited. In the process of getting along, Li Beihe discovered that Lu Cheng was not only proficient in martial arts, but also that he seemed to be very knowledgeable. His personality was very calm, and he had a calmness that young people didn't have. He could spend the whole day without getting bored. He can play chess with Li's father, and he can accompany Li Beihe and listen to her say some of her daughter's inner thoughts. He is full of literary talents, and he can speak well, and he can write well and can even draw. Lu Cheng's witty words always made her happy. She couldn't feel this feeling when she was with Yingxiu. Yingxiu was silent and introverted. She usually only followed her around in silence and didn't know how to use it. He coaxes her with sweet words, unlike Lu Cheng, who even if he can't see, he will have people prepare silk and tie it into silk flowers to send to her, which will give her a certain surprise. Li Beihe is originally young and is at the age of 15 when her love begins. And soon, with Lu Cheng's various tricks, she began to like him. After Lu Cheng lived in Li's house for 3 months, the man and woman both confessed their feelings. When Li Beihe was immersed in the sweetness of her feelings, she ignored Yingxiu's look of loss and pain, and she also didn't notice the heartbroken look of Meng Qiqi, whom she regarded as her sister. On the other hand, except when Lu Cheng was getting along with Li Beihe, Meng Qiqi would often take care of him silently, making soup for him to replenish his body, and sharpening ink for him when he was writing for Li Beihe. Lu Cheng thought that Meng Qiqi was silently gentle. He is the same person as Li Bai, and sometimes he would say gentle and touching words of love to Meng Qiqi. Lu Cheng was originally tall and handsome, and he also had the temperament of a handsome young man. Meng Qiqi was also a young girl, so if you like this, how natural is it to be a good man? It's just that she thought of Li Beihe's great kindness to her and didn't dare to compete with her, but she hoped that she could do more things for Lu Cheng secretly. In this way, Lu Cheng thought that the eldest lady of the Li family had both a lively and lovely personality. On the other hand, when he had a kind and gentle side, he was even more devoted to her and proposed to marry Li Beihe. Li Beihe had already fallen in love with him and had been waiting for Lu Cheng to mention the engagement. Now that he took the initiative to talk about it, he was naturally surprised and happy. Although Li's father felt that he was sorry for Yingxiu by doing so, he always doted on his daughter and was not willing to go against her daughter's wishes. In a dilemma, he proposed to Yingxiu he wanted to adopt Yingxiu as his adopted son and give him half of the Li family as compensation, but Yingxiu refused without hesitation. He just became more silent day by day. Time passes day by day. When Li Beihe was in the joy and sweetness of her relationship, she found that her sister had lost weight. She had asked Meng Qiqi the reason several times. Manquiqui just cried every time she heard her mention this question, but she couldn't tell the reason. Come on, in this case. Lu Cheng's eyes healed quickly, the remaining poison in his body disappeared, and he was slowly able to see things around him. When he saw Li Beihe's face clearly, he was naturally happy. Lu Cheng, who has recovered his eyesight, seems to be more charming than when he was blind. Their engagement is scheduled for half a month. While Li Beihe was sweetly and shyly preparing to embroider her dowry, Lu Cheng found that he seemed to have overlooked something. In addition to liking the lively Li Beihe, he found that he also seemed to have a crush on Manquiqui, the maid next to Li Beihe. Manquiqui was gentle and generous. In fact, sometimes she was very similar to Li Beihe in one aspect. During the wedding, Manquiqui was gentle and generous. That day, when Lu Cheng and Li Beihe went to the church to get married, Manquiqui stood aside. Tears flowed endlessly. Lu Cheng seemed to suddenly understand something. The 3 times he had originally prayed to the church had already gone to heaven and earth. Only when he was bowing to his parents at the end, he suddenly stopped and walked towards Manquiqui. When he was blind, he had touched Manquiqui's face. He thought it was Li Beihe, especially after he could see things with his eyes. He had no doubt that Li Beihe was born beautiful. Although Manquiqui had a gentle personality, her appearance was not as good as Li Beihe's. He had no doubt that the gentle and well-behaved girl next to him might be the same as the lively girl. He was alone, but Manquiqui's tears hurt his heart. He felt pain inexplicably, and he began to reach out to touch Manquiqui's face. It was exactly the same as the feeling in his memory. Those tears hurt his heart. Lu Cheng closed his eyes again and felt it carefully. Manquiqui cried even harder. He was finally sure that he had recognized the wrong person. Compared to Li Beihe, who is lively but kind-hearted but a bit unruly, Lu Cheng prefers Manquiqui, who is slender and sensitive after losing her parents since she was a child. Although it was the Li family who saved him when he was injured. But it was Manquiqui who had been silently caring about him and taking care of him in every possible way. Lu Cheng found that he was just grateful and had a certain liking for Li Beihe, but he really loved Manquiqui, so at that moment Lu Cheng put on his red face, the wedding robe was pulled off and Manquiqui was hugged into her arms. He decided to marry Manquiqui. It was almost time to go to the church to get married, but things suddenly took such a shocking turn. The Li family was naturally shocked, and Li Beihe couldn't accept the result. When Li's father was furious, Lu Cheng revealed in desperation. After revealing his identity as King Cheng of Wei State, there were 3 kings with different surnames in Wei State, and the Lu family was one of them. The court had always wanted to eradicate the 3 kings with different surnames, so Lu Cheng had been assassinated all the time. This time Lu Cheng, the great master, around him left due to personal matters, so people from the court took advantage of him, so he was seriously injured. When he desperately escaped under the protection of the guards, he happened to be rescued by Li Beihe and hid in Li's house to recuperate. Once their identities were revealed, the Li family, no matter how angry they were, had no choice but to endure it. Lu Cheng wanted to marry Manquiqui as his concubine. He already had a princess in his family, but he didn't actually love him. Princess, what he loves is Manquiqui, who is as delicate and lovely as an elegant orchid. On the wedding day, the bride is suddenly replaced by the good sister he grew up with. It is natural to imagine the pain and grievance in Li Beihe's heart. They wanted to make a scene and scream, but Prince Lu Cheng's identity suppressed the Li family from opening their mouths. In order to make it legitimate for him to marry Manquiqui, Lu Cheng asked Li's mother to accept Manquiqui as his nominal adopted daughter. On the 2nd day after the marriage, he was afraid that his sweetheart would have a hard time being a good person in the Li family, so he decided to take her away. The Li family was originally prepared to accept Manquiqui as their adopted daughter, but because the Li family liked Manquiqui and wanted to give her a good background, it was completely different from the feeling of being forced to accept her as their adopted daughter. After this blow, the Li family lost face. She had completely lost everything, and she didn't dare to speak out after suffering the loss. Li Beihe was always a proud person, and the double betrayal of her sister and the man she liked made her quickly become psychologically distorted. She wanted to take revenge on these two people, but the Li family was just a small family that had donated money to gain the reputation of being a member of the family. Although they had some money, they could not compare with the three kings of different surnames in the Wei Kingdom. Li Beihe didn't sleep all night. I want to decide whether I want to enter the palace or she wants to enter the palace to compete for favor. Then I will take revenge on these two people after I have gained status. The current emperor of Wei is old and feeble. How could the Li family be willing to let their beautiful daughter enter the palace at this time? In addition, the Li family is not a strong family. After Li Beihe entered the palace, there was no one to help her, and the road ahead would be difficult. It would be fine if the family did not care about their daughter. Naturally, they hoped that their daughter entering the palace can earn some honor for the family. But Li's father was reluctant to even take a concubine for his daughter. How could he be willing to let his daughter enter the palace and be ruined by the incompetent old emperor? So he persuaded Li Beihe for a few days, and asked his wife to persuade Li Beihe several times, but Li Beihe was not moved at all and still entered the palace. The night she decided to enter the palace, she was in a place she didn't know. Yingxiu, who had been her fiancé for several years and always thought he would walk a lifetime with her hand in hand, suddenly made a decision. He castrated himself and accompanied Li Beihe into the palace. After the two entered the palace, Li Beihe fought for favor and climbed up the ladder with a resentment in her chest. She was framed and bullied, and almost died in the palace. Every time, it was Yingxiu who helped her. Every time it was Yingxiu who shielded her from both open and covered attacks. He was like a loyal barrier in front of her, always thinking about her. Having borne a lot of hardships for her, even for Li Beihe's wish, Yingxiu slowly began to become gloomy and twisted. He began to harm others and seize power. Yingxiu was like a sinister and crazy snake, biting everyone who wanted it behind his back. Li Beihe was unfavorable. With the help of Yingxiu, Li Beihe quickly climbed to the position of fourth concubine. She began to use her current power to frame Lu Chang. She began to use all her power to deal with Lu Chang. Because of her personal grudges with Lu Chang, the relationship between the court and the three kings with different surnames became increasingly tense. Lu Chang was forced to do nothing by her, and finally decided to rebel. However, before the rebellion, Lu Chang first sent people back. Jing reported back to the old emperor, saying that the Li family and Lu Chang conspired to rebel, and that Lu Chang's current strength was all due to the help of the Li family. The old emperor was already old and fatuous, and he didn't even think about it when he heard this. Someone ordered everyone in the Li family to be beheaded, and Li Beihe, who had climbed to the throne of concubine, was demoted to a commoner. In the cold palace, only Yingxiu was still accompanying Li Beihe, who had lost everything. When Lu Chang led the army to attack the imperial city of Wei and became emperor, he wanted to execute Li Beihe, the so-called enchantress, as a sacrifice to the soldiers of the three armies. Li Beihe first swallow the poison that will take effect after a few hours. When Yingxiu found out that Li Beihe had taken the medicine, she didn't say anything. He just turned around and left. It wasn't until a few hours later that Li Beihe was in pain all over because of the medicine. Lu Chang came, leading Meng Qiqui to carry a bleeding head. Come on, the head with eyes wide open and eyes fixed on death is Yingxiu's head. Meng Qiqui, who now no longer has the low-spirited temperament she once had, stared at Li Beihe with a look of resentment and accused her of being selfish and ruining the sisterhood. When Li Beihe was sneering, Meng Qiqui first scolded Li Beihe for being unfaithful, abandoning Yingxiu as her fiancé first, and then letting Yingxiu die for her, which was very selfish. When Li Beihe heard this, he was naturally very dissatisfied, and the two retorted. When she got up, Meng Qiuqi sneered and said, Yingxiu's original martial arts strength has reached the level of a master. He has a rare yang bone body, which is rare in 1,000 years. Do you know? In order to enter the palace to protect you, he castrated himself. His body was missing its roots and has been incomplete since then. Originally, he is expected to advance to the realm of Grand Master within 100 years and have a lifespan of hundreds of years from then on. But for you, he has only come here in his life. He even wanted to assassinate Zero in order to avenge you. In the end, he was apart from the great masters around Chenglang. Li Beihe, you are such a selfish person, how could I have sworn sisters with you before? I am ashamed of you, you are blind and cannot see the people around you, you deserve to die. Meng Qiuqi's words were like a giant hammer hitting Li Beihe's heart. She didn't understand what a great master was, nor did she understand martial arts lifespan. It wasn't until later when Meng Qiuqi scolded her with hatred that she realized that there were other things in this world besides palace struggles. And there are martial arts disputes. There are 5 great masters in this world, and each one has immeasurable strength. The ones who dominate the world are not the so-called royal family, but the real masters. These great masters each protect different forces. Has been hundreds of years. Once you reach the realm of a great master, your lifespan can be hundreds more, if you are more powerful. He could even comprehend a higher realm. With his Yingxiu aptitude and natural yang bone body, he had the best chance of advancing to the untouched realm. However, in order to protect Li Beihe, he castrated himself and ruined his bright future. Ruined his life, not even wanting to live for hundreds of years, just wanted to stay by Li Beihe's side. After knowing that Li Beihe had eaten poison, he even wanted to assassinate Lu Cheng. But he was killed by the great master beside Lu Cheng. After knowing these things, Li Beihe was shocked. She didn't know this at all before. She only thought that Yingxiu was her good partner and her solid backing. She didn't know that Yingxiu loved her deeply. You are such a heartless woman. Do you know what you have lost, right? You are so cruel and heartless, you do not deserve love. And do you know that Yingxiu is the legitimate son of the Yin family in Nanyang County? He could have had a good life. My life was ruined for you, a person like you. Living is harming others, it is better to die early. Meng Qiuqi's words were like 5 thunders striking the head. It exploded in Li Beihe's heart. Li Beihe held Yingxiu's head and cried bitterly. She didn't know that Yingxiu was so affectionate to her. For her, he not only gave up important things in men, but even his family's reputation, status, and lifespan. No more. How could she repay such kindness? She couldn't help crying. The toxicity took hold now, and she slowly died holding Yingxiu's head in her arms. Li Beihe didn't want any revenge before she died, and she didn't want to kill Lu Cheng again to vent her anger. She just wanted Yingxiu to live. She owed Yingxiu something that she would never be able to repay in her lifetime. Many things she seemed to have forgotten in the past. At this time, Li Beihe thought that although Yingxiu was serious in words, even though he had betrayed everyone in the world and his hands were stained with blood for her, he became cruel and ruthless, but he only gave up everything for himself. She hates that for 2 unworthy people, she ruined her life, ruined the Li family, ruined her parents who loved her, and even ruined the man who loved her. How could she be so young and ignorant in the past that she mistakenly thought that Yingxiu didn't like her and only treated her as a sister? How could she be so stupid, blinded by hatred? Before she died, she hated herself. She hated herself for letting down Yingxiu's love and being blind in her eyes. She wanted to repay Yingxiu, she wanted to get back the life she had missed, and she wanted to say sorry to Yingxiu. But Yingxiu is dead, it's too late for her to even apologize. Li Beihe wants a chance to repent. Since Yingxiu has taken care of her, she wants Lily to repay Yingxiu for her. Revenge is no longer important, and Lu Cheng is no longer important. She just wants to repay Yingxia well. After receiving the plot, tears fell from the corners of Lily's eyes again. When she thought of the name Yingxiu, her heart seemed to be bleeding. The original owner's resentment, guilt, regret and other emotions were intertwined before her death, forming a deep feeling. The deep obsession was tightly wrapped around her heart now. The obsession was so deep that even Lily's already high mental strength could not suppress it. Lily shed tears silently and let her body vent for a while. She felt a lot more comfortable, and then suddenly remembered that the time she entered the mission was when she was dumped by Lu Cheng in public on her wedding day and married Meng Qiqi. Li Beihe almost didn't go crazy because of such stimulation, so she decided to enter the palace in anger. Li's mother, who left before, wanted to persuade her to give up her idea, and Yanqiu in the plot seemed to know that after entering the palace, he castrated himself. He originally had a good future, but ended up ruining his life for her. Lily hurriedly sat up, raised the curtain and shouted, "Where is Yingxiu?" It was rare to see Lily, who had been reluctant to say anything just now, suddenly asking about someone else. Several maids were stunned for a moment, and Lily quickly urged, "Hurry up and find someone today." Because of the incident, Lu Cheng temporarily regretted his change. Li Beihe was so shocked by the incident about the bride that she wanted to hang herself first, and then said that she wanted to take revenge by entering the palace as a concubine. The Li family all revolved around her, so they ignored Yingxiu. When she thought about it, she had already everything becomes a meal and nothing can be undone again. Everyone seemed to have come to their senses after Lily drank, and hurriedly ran outside. Lily didn't care about her disheveled hair, grabbed the wedding dress she had thrown on the bedside, put it on her body, and started rushing out. About half a quarter of an hour later, everyone found him in Yingxiu's room. At this moment, his face was pale, and the room still smelled of blood. When Lily saw him, she felt a sharp pain in her heart, and she burst into tears. It flowed down involuntarily. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. Your support is my biggest motivation. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 457. When he saw a bunch of people breaking in, Yingxiu seemed to be stunned for a moment. His originally pretty face was now pale, and his eyes were astonishingly dark. His hair was now hanging behind him, maybe because of pain. His cheeks were twitching slightly. When he saw Lily crying, the muscles on Yingxiu's cheeks slid twice, and there was a bit of anxiety in his eyes. In the end, he didn't say anything to coax her not to cry, but was silent for a while. Then said in a seductive voice, "I will accompany you into the palace." Originally, Li Beihe was spoiled by her parents. She always wanted wind and rain. Her parents were never dissatisfied with what she wanted. Therefore, she developed a certain attitude. If something happened, then she must have the temperament to never look back. It was precisely because Yingxiu knew her character that she did not persuade her after hearing that she was going to enter the palace, because everyone knew that Li Beihe had a character that could not be persuaded. Yes, he didn't coax her or persuade her, but used the most indulgent way to accompany her. This man does not know how to sweet talk, nor is he as eloquent as the Prince Lu Cheng, nor is he full of literary talent like Lu Cheng, who cannot coax Li Beihe into elation, cannot compose poems, or write lyrics, nor can he express his love for Li Beihe. When he told his daughter what was on his mind, he gave her serious advice and enlightened her, but he was pampering Li Beihe in the simplest way, silently tolerating her willfulness and nonsense, tolerating her. Li Beihe in the plot only thought that a dull-tempered person like Yingxiu would not really like her, and only regarded her as a sister. She also did not like his taciturn character. It was not until later that she realized that this man who was not good at words was for her. What have you done? Inexplicable sadness came to her heart, and Lily took a deep breath. She forcibly suppressed the pain in her heart. The moment she saw Yanqiu, Lily knew that she might have arrived a little late. His face was so pale that there was no trace of blood. He was wearing a white lute garment. The white hem of his clothes covered the pants underneath him, but the sinister smell of blood that filled the room still made Lily guess what had happened before. Yingxiu pursed her lips, with a look of anxiety in her eyes. Then he became helpless, and finally fell silent. He didn't know how to coax Lily, so he could only speak without opening his mouth. His previous dull and taciturn appearance was naturally not as lovable as Lu Cheng, but there was something in Lily's body. But there was sadness. Lily was so pressed that she couldn't breathe. You guys go out first. Lily tried her best to suppress the feeling that was wrapped around her heart like a vine, and gave a few instructions to the maid who was following her. After a group of people went out one after another, Lily walked towards Yingxiu. Every step she took, she remembered the scene in the plot where Li Beihe held Yingxiu's head in her arms and cried after his head was cut off. The original owner was very obsessed this time. Especially now after Lily saw Yingxiu, her obsession was so heavy that even Lily couldn't control this body. Axiu, why did you accompany me into the palace? Her voice was trembling when she spoke. Yingxiu saw her familiar eyebrows and smiled softly. His lips were so white that they were almost transparent. He smiled now. Very weak, his voice was soft but serious. I have my own way. Yingxiu in the plot also said the same thing to Li Beihe. At that time, Li didn't ask him what he could do, until she later entered the palace as a palace maid. Only after Yingxiu also entered the palace as a chamberlain did Li Beihe know what Yingxiu had done. In the plot, she was blinded by hatred and didn't think about how Yingxiu felt when she did this. She felt a little uncomfortable until now, but it was too late to regret. Axiu, thank you. Lily was sure that Yingxiu had already touched her without asking. He was the kind of person who couldn't say the word love, but did more than anyone else. He never said he liked Li Beihe, but what he did was better than Lu Cheng, who could speak better than sing. If he had castrated himself at this time, Lily would only hurt him if he asked. It's just the heart. Yingxiu has already taken action, so the matter of entering the palace must be a certainty. The original owner's wish was to live a good life with Yingxiu and make up for everything she missed in the plot. Lily originally planned to live as the original owner in this life. She married Yingxiu with her own identity, and the two supported each other, but now that Yingxiu has hurt herself, her original plan will naturally change. Otherwise, what if she says she doesn't want to enter the palace and lets the castrated Yingxiu do it? Lily approached Yingxiu, tears falling down like broken beads. His expression was pale, and the smell of blood on his body became stronger the closer she got. Lily reached out to hold his hand, but his palm was cold and still trembling slightly. Cold sweat broke out in his palms, and his whole body was tense at this time, as if he was enduring great pain, but when Lily stretched out his hand to grasp his palm, no matter how tight he grasped it, he still spread his palm obediently. And was even afraid that her instinctive movement of clenching her fists to endure the pain would hurt her, so she opened her palms widely. Lily felt that she felt a little pity for him, and gently leaned her head on his shoulder. Ashiu, thank you for having you. This sentence was said by her on behalf of the original owner. In her previous life, Yingxiu had always been by her side and never left her. She even managed to assassinate Lu Cheng and die after Li Beihe took poison. Although the two did not get married during their lives. But Yingxiu has committed life and death to Li Beihe. He and Li Beihe are not husband and wife, but his feelings for Li Beihe are better than husband and wife. Thank you for what? I should do it. When Yingxiu heard Lily say thank you, the corners of his mouth pursed, and his expression was a little gloomy. Obviously Lily's thank you did not make him feel happy, but he couldn't bear to blame, so he sighed. After a moment of hesitation, he reached out and took Lily into his arms. His arms were trembling slightly at this time. Due to the large amount of blood loss, they were even a little cold and not very warm, but there was a feeling of sadness and satisfaction in this body. In the plot, Li Beihai and Yin Xiu got along briefly. In his whole life, the two of them had never been so intimate from beginning to end. Lily felt her eyes sore and finally cried loudly while hugging Yin Xiu. The night passed like this. Li Beihai's body was exhausted after a night of great joy and sorrow. Although Yin Xiu had practiced martial arts since he was a child, he had just injured himself, so his face was gloomy and defeated at this time. Amazing, when Li's mother came over and asked her daughter to go back to her room to rest, Lily did not refuse. Although this body was somewhat reluctant to leave Yin Xiu, Lily knew that if she was here, Yin Xiu would not be able to rest peacefully, so she hesitated. After a while, he dragged his feet and followed Li's mother. Although Li's father and Li's mother were reluctant to let their only daughter enter the palace, the two couples could not stop Li Beihai in the plot, and naturally they could not stop Beihai, who had already decided at this moment. After waiting for Yin Xiu to recover from his injury for several days, the Li family, still the inner palace, came out to recruit people and reported their daughter's name. Yin Xiu also went to register. Except for Lily, who knew about his self-castration, the Li family did not know about it until they came to take them into the palace. When the carriage stopped at Li's mansion, the Lis and his wife seemed to suddenly understand something. A group of young men and women were crowded together in the carriage. These were all people who were about to enter the palace. At this time, a group of children had not been baptized by the cruel palace struggle. Several pale-faced boys about 10 years old were crowded together. On the side, in order to enter the imperial city gate, the pain that the young men had to endure was obviously no less than that of the girls. Many people were trembling with fear of the unknown body. Several children looked like they wanted to cry but did not dare to cry. Because when a chamberlain came in just now, he warned that anyone who dared to cry would be beaten. Lily sat next to Yin Xiu. As the carriage rocked, Yin Xiu sat upright and stretched out her arms to hold Lily in her arms. The carriage became more and more crowded and stuffy with a strange smell. Yin Xiu turned to her side. The whole body took all the pressure of being squeezed on itself, leaving a small gap for Lily in the corner so that she would not be unable to turn around. Although the space was not big, she could pretend at this moment in a place with more and more people. This rare opportunity to turn around was obtained by Yin Xiu under pressure. This young man really couldn't speak, but Lily looked up at him and saw the dense beads of sweat on his forehead. His face turned a little blue at this time, and his arms were tightly pressed against the car. Using his own actions to express his care for Li Beihai, Lily suddenly felt that the original owner was blind. He didn't like such a good fiancé, but he wanted to ruin his life for a so-called King Cheng. "Axiu, are you tired?" Lily took out the handkerchief from her sleeve and gently wiped the sweat from Yin Xiu's forehead. There were too many people, and slight sobbing and breathing were intertwined around her. Making the small car still very noisy, Lily talked close to Yin Xiu's ear, and at the same time took out a few packets of snacks that Li's mother had stuffed into her pocket when she left home, broke them open, and fed him. The original owner had never been so close to Yin Xiu before. Li Beihai was originally a carefree, lively, and lovely character. Although she was kind-hearted, she was not as considerate as Meng Qiqi. She and Yin Xiu were known as an unmarried couple. A few years, but in fact the two of them didn't even have much time to talk. Lily pinched some pastry and handed it to Yin Xiu. Yin Xiu was stunned for a moment, looking at the way she was holding the pastry in one hand. Her eyes were bright. Staring at him, his ears were a little red and his eyes turned left and right in panic. He didn't dare to look at Lily's face anymore. He opened his mouth and bit into the pastry. He should be very nervous at this moment. He was holding on steadily. The arms holding the carriage seemed to be trembling a little, and there was a look of bewilderment on his face, which made him look a little panicked and shy. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. Your support is my biggest motivation. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 458. It's still too early to enter the palace. If you want to enter the palace, you need to go through numerous checks and procedures. Although it is not as rigorous as the draft, it still takes 2 days. If you are the first person in these 2 days, that's it, those waiting behind are still crowded, and no one cares whether any of them have a meal at this time. So after Yingxiu ate a piece of pastry, Lily still refused to open his mouth no matter how much he coaxed him. He pursed his lips and stared at Lily without saying a word. In the original plot, his character made Lily dislike it very much, but Lily knew that he was afraid that he would starve later if he was full, so she felt sad. Wiped his mouth and wrapped the pastry again. You eat. Yingxiu frowned when he saw her actions and motioned for Lily to eat, but Lily shook her head. I'm not hungry yet. I don't want to eat now. I'll eat it later. She behaved like a coquettish girl, showing a bit of girlish cuteness compared to the previous coquettishness. Her delicate ears were a little red, but she didn't force her anymore. Afterwards, no one wanted to eat more of the bag of pastries, and only wanted to let the other party eat a little. Until it was the turn of the people in the carriage to check. It was already 2 days later, and the pastry had already given off a rancid smell. Being able to enter the palace naturally means that even if it is impossible to eat such exquisite food, it can at least fill her stomach temporarily. When Lily was about to throw away the bag of sour pastries in her arms, Yingxiu was depressed. He snatched it away without a sound, opened it and ate it into his stomach in 2 or 3 bites. The pastry no longer tasted good, but he didn't show any disgust. He probably couldn't bear to have something that they had shared be thrown away like this. When he was hungry, no one was willing to eat the cake, but now that he had something to eat, he couldn't bear to let go of the feeling of being together. Lily understood what Yingxiu was thinking, but he just couldn't say it, so he couldn't do it anymore. Of course, he was not remembered by anyone, but Li Bei thought he had a gloomy and weird temper. Although she didn't want to be separated from Yingxiu, the aunt and the chambermaid in the palace still separated the two of them at this moment. Lily was calm and generous in temperament. He was assigned to the needlework bureau and lived in a large room with the girl who came to the palace with him at the same time. About 7 or 8 palace maids lived in the same room. After a few people put down their luggage, the aunt in charge from outside began to come to call for her. The people went out to let the new girls in the palace work. The needlework bureau is a very tired place among the 24 yamen in the palace, except for the clothing bureau. It makes clothes for almost everyone in the palace every day. They were busy morning and night, and on their first day at the needlework bureau, a female officer called Aunt Lu gave them a tough blow and made a group of girls sit on their knees on a hot July day. On the hard board, with the scorching sun above my head. There was a mountain of clothing next to it, and it was almost spring. In addition to the clothes of the masters in the palace, there are countless eunuchs and maids in and outside the palace. All the clothes for the changing seasons have to be made by their hands. Before long, a girl couldn't bear to move. The aunt in charge of the needlework bureau picked up the iron ruler in her hand and hit the palace maid's leg hard. The palace maid was as thin as a bean sprout. After being beaten, I endured the pain but did not dare to cry out. I just trembled like chaff all over my body. Tears welled up in her eyes, but her aunt shouted at her sharply. "Swallow your corpse water quickly. There is no room for tears in this palace. In this palace, if you can survive it, you will become the maid next to the master and the queen. If you can't survive it, you will not be left in the mass graves in the palace a corpse." Li Bei in the plot has rarely experienced this. Although she was not liked by people because of her gloomy temper, Li Bei was naturally beautiful and beautiful. She entered the palace again because she wanted to climb up to Lu Cheng. She wanted to take revenge, so after entering the palace, she bribed an ant in charge, and was assigned to the scarf and hat bureau. She made clothes and hats for some dignitaries in the court. The work was much more leisurely than it is now. In the end, she borrowed money from Lee's father. Because Lee's mother gave her a large sum of money, she directly sneaked into the side of a certain young master who was favored at the time and became one of her rough and tumble girls. After using all kinds of tricks, she got the emperor to favor her, and finally she had a title. Although there were some twists and turns in the middle, overall the early stage was smooth. In the middle stage, Yingxia was loyal to her wholeheartedly. In the later stage, Yingxia got a reputation for her ruthlessness in eradicating her dissidents and did many shady things. Apart from dealing with King Cheng, Li Beihe herself had never worried about anything else. Except for the fact that King Cheng used counter-intentional tactics to retaliate against her and used the emperor to kill the entire Li family, she was hit. Li Beihe's life can be said to be smooth. But this time Beihe entered the palace with no intention of serving the emperor anymore, so she did not use the Li family's resources to build momentum for herself. Instead, she waited for the assignment honestly, and now she was assigned to the needlework bureau. The feeling of the scorching sun on her head was not pleasant, but there were not many lilies around, but the only thing she had more of was patience. She tried her best to ignore the tingling sensation on her legs from sitting on her knees for too long, and her hands began to turn green. Got the feeling. Having entered ancient missions so many times, she didn't have much time to actually touch needle and thread. But fortunately, Lily now has high mental strength and high intelligence, so she learned quickly. Except for the first few stitches that didn't look very decent, the rest as she began to sew clothes, she slowly found the feeling. When a group of girls were dizzy and trembling in the sun, she still sat steadily, her back straight, and although her movements were not flying stitches, but she didn't move quickly. The people who started moving faster than her had already slowed down, with a look of panic on their faces. Lily was the only one who gritted her teeth and endured it. She didn't move fast at first. But she did not slow down at the end. 3 hours later, when several new maids fainted from the dizzy sun, even though Lily had cold sweat on her forehead, there was no movement on her hands. Stopped. When several ants sitting under the eaves saw the scene here, they all looked at each other, nodded with satisfaction, pointed at Lily and said, "After you finish your work, go back to your room to rest." The rest of the people will continue their work. After saying that, a steward ant asked someone to bring a few more buckets of water, signaling to the first few people who fainted to put the buckets in. He raised it up and said, "Your bodies are too delicate. Since it is not my mistress's destiny, you have to endure hardships." Lily only felt that her eyes were dizzy. She had been looking at the green cloth in her hand for so long that her eyes were double-imaged. She was just stitching by feeling. When she heard that she could leave after finishing her work, she breathed a sigh of relief, speeded up her movements to finish the work at hand, bowed to several ants, and then walked along the corridor towards her room. The place where the maids lived was naturally not as good as the maids of high rank. It was just an old side hall in the most remote corner of the palace. When Lily returned to the room, her luggage was still thrown on the stone bed. She went out first to carry some by herself. After the cold water came in, she wiped off the sweat on her body and changed into another piece of clothing. She felt that the panic in her heart was much better. After a pause, she hesitated and began to practice the star training technique. Many peasant girls couldn't do the tedious work in the palace, and Li Beihe, a girl who had been pampered since she was a child, was even more strenuous. If she didn't have martial arts to help her improve her health, Lily felt that she might not survive half a month. After today's exposure, if she hadn't had good endurance and gritted her teeth with all her strength to endure it, I'm afraid she wouldn't have returned home by now. None of the palace maids who lived with her had come back yet. Lily carefully closed the door and began to try to lower her waist. What surprised Lily was that this body was also suitable for martial arts training. Xingqian's physical training movements started at this moment. A large amount of spiritual energy began to penetrate into her body along the limbs and bones, stroking away her previous fatigue and aches. Lily carefully guided this spiritual energy to move around her body, allowing them to slowly turn into internal force. On the one hand, I started to feel a little suspicious about this situation. It's just that he was a born martial arts prodigy after entering the mission body once, but it turned out to be like this twice and 3 times. If there was no weirdness in it, Lily would definitely not believe it. It's just that he was still on the mission at the moment and could not return to the starry sky. Asking Li Yangzi why, she planned to ask him properly after completing this mission. After finishing the whole set of star training, Lily was sweating profusely, but now her physical strength was stronger than ever before. The sun was already setting in the west outside, but a group of girls hadn't come back yet. Thinking of what to do in the future, it's not easy to survive in this palace. She still has a Yingxiu to protect. It's definitely not possible without any strength. Lily hesitated for a moment and started to do the star training again. After completing the 2 sets of movements, she sat down on her knees. After the stinging pain that had lasted for a long time had completely subsided, it was already dark outside, and lanterns were dotted in the corridor outside the palace. Lily was dripping with sweat. She was just about to go out and bring some water back to scrub her body. There was a knock on the door. "He Niang, are you in the house?" Yinqiu's voice rang. When Lily heard it was him, she quickly opened the door. Yinqiu was holding a bucket in his hand. He had changed into a brown suit. He was clothed in commoner clothes, wearing a pointed hat, and a pair of blue cloth shoes. He was no different from other rankless chamberlains in the palace. Lily felt sour in her heart when she saw him, and she felt hot and swollen with tears. Don't cry. In his early years, Yinqiu had studied under the martial arts master Li's father hired for him. Although his strength was not as strong as the master's later, he was still sharp and clear. He immediately felt the change in Lily's breathing. Put down the bucket in his hand, listened to the silence around, pulled Lily to the window, looked at the weak firelight coming into the room from outside, and saw the dense needlework wounds on Lily's fingertips. His face quickly darkened. "Don't worry, I'll be with you in everything. He Niang will never be wronged." To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. Your support is mine the biggest motivation. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 459. Yingxiu thought that the reason why Lily cried when she saw him was because she suffered a lot after entering the palace. Now she wanted to comfort her, but she couldn't say sweet words of love like Lu Cheng did. Instead, it was because she was very nervous. Seriously, the more anxious he was, the more Lily couldn't control herself from crying and shaking her head. The sight of Yingxiu wearing the clothes of a chamberlain reminded this body of the time when the two first entered the palace, when they were both walking step by step. During the difficult time, Li Beihe only thought about climbing up and one day avenging the blood and hatred, and venting a lot of anger on herself. She didn't even notice Yingxiu's care for her, nor did she realize that Yingxiu had gone to all lengths for her. Having lost something and now experiencing it again, even though Li Beihe's soul was no longer here, his body instinctively felt sad. Yingxiu didn't know how to coax her with sweet words. She just silently took the handkerchief and wiped her hands with her. Her movements were as cautious as if she were holding the most precious thing in the world. She didn't dare to use any strength for fear of pinching her. It hurt, and he would blow on Lily's palm from time to time. His cherished look made Lily feel a little sad. "He Niang, I can't stay too long. I'll bring ointment for you tomorrow, so be careful." Yinqiu came here today because she was afraid that Lily, who had just entered the palace, would not be used to being around others, so she specially fetched water for her. He himself had just entered the palace, and he had been reduced from being the future uncle of the Li family to serving others, but he did not say a word. It was painful. Lily blinked her eyes and cleared her heart. The pain subsided and he whispered, "Axio, where are you now?" "There are 12 supervisors, 4 divisions, and 8 bureaus in the palace." The Yin scholar in the plot was not successful when he entered the palace. Being assigned to the War Bureau, he already had countless things to do every day, just because he had been making weapons in the War Bureau for more than a year in the beginning. Later, even after the two of them got over it slowly, the calluses on her hands have never gone away. It was because she had too many blisters when she first entered the game. When Lily was first held by him, she had actually seen a lot of skinned places in his palms. He just wanted to. She even dipped some water in it to wash her head, face, and hands, which made Lily deeply moved. However, she pretended not to know and asked him deliberately. Yingxiu paused and stretched out her hand as if to touch her face, but she raised her hand and put it down again. Her eyelids drooped to block the thoughts in her eyes. "You don't have to worry about me now. I have good luck today." Eunuch Cao, the governor of the capital, appreciates it and is already with him. Yingxiu doesn't talk much on weekdays, but it doesn't mean that he is a fool. The compliment was spoken smoothly, but it was obviously a lie, as if it had been pondering in the heart for a long time. Now he blurted it out smoothly. He was a newcomer who had just entered the palace, in a palace where countless chambermaids died every year. It's so easy to flatter someone, knowing that he probably doesn't want to worry about himself, not to mention that even if Yingxiu is willing to go to the palace for Li Beihe's sake, he still has his own dignity, and Lily won't expose him. After thinking for a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Axio, I want to tell you something. Can you come to me early tomorrow?" When Yin Ziokai entered the palace, he risked his life in order to survive as soon as possible to protect Li Beihe. Because of his self-castration, he had lost what martial arts practitioners call his innate vitality. In addition, although his martial arts skills were present, they were not very high. Therefore, Yingxiu suffered a lot in the early stage. But when Li Beihe knew this later, because he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he didn't feel it touched his heartstrings that much. But now when Lily thought about it, there was a subtle emotion in her heart. After doing the task for a long time, in fact, deep down in my heart, I have become as solid as a rock. I am no longer the person who was easily led by the characters in the plot at the beginning, but the Yingxiu at this moment made Lily. She felt a little distressed, not only because of the remaining instinctive feelings in the original owner's body, but also because of Lily's distress for him, so she thought about it and decided to teach him the star training technique. Lily didn't know what martial arts in this world was like. Yingxiu had been practicing martial arts since he was a child. Lily didn't want him to be distracted and practice other martial arts at this moment, so she was only going to teach him Xing Chen physical training. Whether it was for any kind of martial arts, star training is equivalent to an introduction to help improve one's body to absorb spiritual energy. It is like transforming the body into a medium of nature. If you practice internal strength together with star training, when used, it can turn the endless aura of heaven and earth into one's own internal force and introduce it into the body. If you are practicing spells, the same star training technique can also have wonderful effects, and the most important thing is that this can be similar to the inner strength technique. Things are used at the same time. If they cooperate well with each other, the effect will be even more outstanding. In the plot, although Yingxiu is physically mutilated due to purification, so there is no way to enter the realm of the Grand Master in the end, Lily still wants to help him, not to let him assassinate Lu Cheng to vent his anger. She just wants to let him live in the palace as quickly as possible and suffer less, which can be regarded as a good thing for Li Beihe. Although Lily also hesitated whether she would forget her star training skills once she taught them to others, but when she saw Yingxiu's face, Lily became determined again. It was too late today. If Yingxiu continued to stay, being discovered might be detrimental to both of them, so Lily was not in a hurry to teach him at this time. When she heard Lily said that she wanted him to come over early tomorrow, Yingxiu did not hesitate or ask why, and twisted the guy again. Tong opened the door, looked around and found no one, then walked out. As soon as he left, Lily lay down on her bed covered with straw mats and fell asleep directly. At night, a group of palace maids came back in twos and threes. It's fixed. The palace servants like Lily who have just entered the palace can only receive half a bowl of rice a day at most. If they behave better, they may get some vegetables. As for the palace servants who came back late, they are a little tired and haven't even eaten dinner all day. When she came back, she didn't even dare to take a shower. After sitting on her knees for a whole day, her legs almost seemed like they were about to give out. When she came back, she hugged her and cried sadly. Lily couldn't sleep at all the whole night listening to the sobbing of these palace ladies. No, she simply indulged her thoughts in practicing her internal strength. After the internal strength accumulated during the day circulated in her body for several days, the sky outside became dimly bright. When Behi sat up energetically, the group of palace ladies couldn't get up at all. When the ant in charge asked a palace maid to come over and yell at people, a group of palace ladies stood up shivering. Because she had a good rest yesterday and had some weak internal energy in her body, Lily was in good spirits today, but she became hungry before the morning meal time. The lowest palace maid could only eat one morning meal a day. Rice, it is only possible to eat a second meal after you have a grade and reach a certain level. Lily performed well today, and the ant quickly let her go. In addition to allowing her to use a bowl of rice, she also gave her an additional meal. She paired it with a steamed bun. Thinking of making an appointment to have Yinqiu come to find her today, Lily hesitated. Although Lily ate the meal in front of a group of palace maids, she kept the steamed buns and hid them in her sleeves. Because Lily finished her work quickly that day, the ant in charge once again asked her to go back first. Now, because of the new arrival in the palace, the ants in charge were establishing their authority in front of the newcomers. Lily's good behavior will naturally being pampered by the ants, those who behave poorly will be kept. In this way, the new entrants to the palace will be divided into several factions, and they will not trust each other, and they will all rush to please the ants. These are already common methods used by the old people in the palace. Behi herself was not unfamiliar with such methods when she had too many tasks in the palace. However, she knew that these high-level female officials were using her as a target, but she pretended not to know. Usually, she needed time now, so she thanked her aunt and quickly returned to her room. The sky was slowly getting dark, and before a group of palace people returned to their rooms, the knock on the door rang again. After Lily opened the door, she saw Yingxiu, who was twisting a bucket and still dressed as yesterday, standing there. Outside the door. Pulling him into the house quickly, Lily took out the steamed buns she had hidden during the day and was about to hand it to Yingxiu. He also took something wrapped in oil paper and handed it over. Both of them made the same move. After being stunned, Lily opened the paper handed over by Yingxiu, and there was also a steamed bun wrapped inside. Due to the hot weather, the steamed bun actually had some flavor now, and the wrapping didn't look good. At this time the steamed buns had long been transformed, but both of them felt a little unhappy. In the plot, Li Beihe was very ambitious because she came to the palace. She was willing to spend money to please her aunt, so she naturally had money in food. It's easy to make trouble. Lily can't remember whether Yingxiu gave her steamed buns in the plot, but at this moment, a worthless thing between the two parties seems to be priceless at this moment. Yingxiu was silent while holding the steamed bun. He lowered his head, and a few blushes appeared on his pale cheeks. Seeing that he was holding the steamed bun without moving, Lily couldn't help but urge him. Axiu, eat quickly. I have something to tell you after you finish. Yingxiu responded softly, tore off a small corner of the steamed bun and ate it, then carefully wrapped it back in the handkerchief and put it in her arms. Lily saw his move and quickly stopped. This steamed bun already has flavor, Axiu, please eat it quickly. At Lily's urging, Yingxiu raised her head, her eyes a little shy, but surprisingly bright. This is what Heniang gave me. I don't want to eat it all at once. I only eat a little and take it back to eat again. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. Your support is my biggest motivation. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 460. Although the Li family treated Yingxiu well in the past, Li Beihe didn't give him many things personally. Lily felt sad when she heard this. She couldn't help but take a deep breath and suppress the complicated thoughts that came out of her heart. He grabbed the steamed bun in his hand, stood on tiptoes and fed it into his mouth. Eat quickly, I will give you more things in the future. Lily looked helpless at him, looking like she wanted to hide but didn't dare. A faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Li Beihe looked down on such a mute but obedient and loyal man, but she fell in love with Prince Chang, who looked down on her. She was really blind. As soon as this thought came out, another heartbreaking feeling went through her body. The pain almost came to her eyes, and Lily took several deep breaths to suppress the distress. Yingxiu swallowed the steamed bun with some regret, and drank several mouthfuls of cold water. Lily then started to let him stand up and let him watch, and then whispered, Axiu, when I was saving King Chang, I accidentally got something. Do you believe that there are people in the world who know how to do martial arts? In the past 2 days, I followed the scroll I got and practiced several times, and I found that my strength is much stronger. When Yingxiu, who had the blush on his cheeks not completely faded away, heard this, his eyes froze for a moment, and his expression slowly became a little serious. He himself is a martial arts practitioner, and he is also very talented. Father Li, the master he hired for him at the beginning, was not a top master, but over the years he had groped and was forced to find a way. Unfortunately, after purification, due to the incompleteness of his body, he could not activate the true power in his body. Once the true power reaches below the Danshan, due to the purification of the body, the true power cannot be locked at all and will leak out from the original integrity of the body. It is as if his body is originally a whole body and can be filled with clean water. After practicing the true power, he could store it, but because the whole thing was cut with his own hands, the water naturally leaked out. No matter how hard he practiced. Even if his muscles and bones are suitable for training, the real power he has cultivated cannot be saved. If he wants to advance again, it will be difficult to reach the sky. He used to have a complete body of yang bones, but now he has destroyed it with his own hands. In the future, he will be in martial arts. I'm afraid it's hard to make any progress along the way. He didn't regret that he helped Lily, but he regretted that he couldn't go further on the path of martial arts and could help her more. Yingxiu did not tell Lily these things. In fact, becoming a Grand Master is tempting for those who embark on the path of martial arts, but if their lives are hundreds of years longer, it will be impossible if she is not there for hundreds of years. Then life has no meaning. Yingxiu lowered her head and said nothing, while Lily sighed silently. Seeing that the rare smile on his face turned expressionless again, I felt a little sour in my heart. She came too late. If it had been so long in the morning, the results might have been different, but now I think about it. It's useless, just like it's useless for the original owner to go back on his word. Using her soul as the price is just to let her realize the wish of the original owner. Axiu, you are optimistic about my movements. You must watch them carefully and carefully. You must not make any mistakes. Beihe taught Yingxiu the star training skills sincerely, not like teaching Li Chengqian in the previous mission. She only teaches 3 moves and 2 moves, no matter how well he practices, as long as he achieves the effect of strengthening his body, she doesn't care about him. At this time, she really wants to teach Yingxiu, so she does the first move seriously. After that, Yingxiu watched for a long time. Although he didn't understand the reason why Lily asked him to follow her, he still listened to Lily and started to imitate her movements. As soon as he finished an action, Yingxiu had obviously realized the benefits of the action. His eyes lit up. Lily pretended not to see it and started to do the second action. In this way, one person teaches and the other learns, and by the time he has learned 15 movements very quickly, most of the time has already slipped away. Axiu, there are still more than half of the movements. Come to me when you are free during this period, and I will teach you them all. Not far away, the heavy footsteps of the palace ladies walking back could be heard. Lily hurriedly, after admonishing Yingxiu a few words, he nodded. His eyes were so bright that Lily didn't dare to look at them. His figure twisting the bucket quickly disappeared into the night, and the group of palace maids who had been tired for the whole day returned to the room. Sister Li, can you fetch me a bucket of water? I'm tired. A palace maid who lived next to Lily's bed came back and lay down on the bed. At this time, she tilted her face and acted coquettishly at Lily. Once someone spoke, people one after another began to beg softly, "My good sister, please help me get some. Sister, do you have anything to eat? I'm hungry." It would be okay if there were only 1 or 2 people. Lily only had to fetch 1 bucket to feed a group of people. But now a group of people came to her to fetch water. Lily couldn't help but laugh. "I just want to help you sisters, and I have my heart. It's so powerless. There are 7 or 8 people living in this room, and each person carries a bucket of water one at a time. Lily has to go back and forth 4 times. What's more, the eyes of these people are obviously jealous, and they ask her to fetch water." There was still a bit of dissatisfaction on the faces of the girls, and Lily was naturally unwilling to do this obviously thankless task, so she smiled and refused, shook the quilt on the bed, and got into bed. Sister is now rich, but she doesn't want to take care of us. The round-faced girl sleeping next to Lily laughed dryly, and sat up immediately. "We are all sisters living in the same room, and we should be like each other. Help, what's the matter with letting you get some water? I'm not asking my sister to lose some skin, so why are you being so stingy? How about my sister fetch some water for me?" Lily heard her sharp voice and originally didn't want to argue with her, but unexpectedly, the round-faced girl seemed to not want her to sleep, so she stretched out her hand and pushed towards her. "You've had a good meal and a lot of rest throughout the day, so what's wrong with helping me?" "I don't care, I just want you to help me get this water today, otherwise you get out of this house." Li Beihe in the plot has never experienced living in the same bunk with a group of people after spending money, so naturally she has not been squeezed out by others like Lily is now. Even the people who entered the palace at the same time as her were secretly jealous. After her, some people framed her later, but Yingxiu solved them one by one for her, and there was no time for her to face them on her own. After the round-faced girl said this, a group of people in the room stared at Lily. Although they did not speak, the expressions on their faces were similar to those of the round-faced girl. They all looked like they wanted Lily to go out and sleep. Lily sneered, ignored them and lay down directly. The round-faced girl kicked her angrily and cursed. Except for Lily and Yingxiu, the men and women who came into the palace together in the carriage were almost all girls from the nearby countryside. They all had to help with some farm work at home on weekdays. This round-faced girl was so angry that the next kick made Lily's back painful. Although she had been practicing star training in the past 2 days, she also retained some spiritual power in her body, but it was not deep, at least not enough to allow this girl's kick to hit her right now. Unable to cause any harm to herself, Lily almost rolled off the narrow bed. A group of people around pointed at Lily and laughed. "Apologize, you shouldn't argue with this group of girls who are still young and ignorant." In Lily's opinion, but there is still a mountain of work to be done tomorrow, and those who cannot finish the work every day will not only be unable to eat, and it was also very detrimental to Lily's martial arts practice. Lily endured the pain and stood up, shook the quilt that had fallen to the ground, looked at the girl calmly and asked her to apologize. The girl was stunned for a moment, and couldn't help laughing when she heard this. He became even more joyful, and before he could speak, he spat at Lily. He failed to spit on Lily, but spitted on her straw mat. Lily was silent for a while, with veins twitching on her forehead. She originally wanted to tell herself that adults don't care about the faults of villains, but in the end she couldn't help it. She threw away the quilt in her hand and grabbed the girl's hand. The quilt was wiped on her bed. The girl was stunned. Apparently she didn't expect such a move. She screamed and was about to reach out to scratch her face. Lily folded her arm with her backhand and did it without thinking. A slap hit her face. There was a crisp sound of pop, and the palace maids who were laughing and joking in the room were stunned for a moment. When the group of people did not react, Lily dragged the girl and walked towards the door. The girl did not react at first. By the time she reacted, Lily had already kicked her foot, turned around and closed the door heavily. "Who else wants me to carry water?" Normally, seeing Lily being silent, everyone thought she was easy to bully, but they didn't expect that she would slap the round-faced girl and throw her out after saying something inappropriate. A group of girls in the room were still smiling. They were startled. Although they were jealous, after all, they were from the countryside before and had little experience. Therefore, after being restrained by Lily, none of them dared to make any more trouble. The girls outside began to knock on the door. She cursed loudly, and as a result of making such a loud noise after dark in the palace, the girl was quickly taken away by several eunuchs. The ants from the needlework bureau quickly rushed over, with a sullen face. "How much have I taught you, God's rules, but you still don't understand the rules. Since you don't want to sleep, then don't sleep again tonight." The girls who had just formed a gang to give Lily a blow were quickly forced to stand up like frightened quails. They all stood in the yard outside. Lily also stood with a group of people. Among them, while everyone was looking tired but struggling to hold on, Lily started to use the spiritual power in her body and began to swim around. After a night when all the girls were exhausted, she was the only one who looked very refreshed. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. Your support is my biggest motivation. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 461. When something like this happened, the round-faced girl, as the troublemaker that day, was beaten several times and sent to the clothing bureau. It was not within the palace anymore. Once she went here, she might never leave again in her life. Many people were shocked, and at the same time, when they investigated the cause of the trouble that day, everyone testified against Lily out of resentment and fear. When the ant from the needlework bureau found Lily, Lily knew that she might not be able to stay in this place. Went down. The ant, who had looked at Lily with a gentle look on her face before, seemed to have changed. She was pointed at Lily and took her down. Although she was not rewarded with a board in the end, Lily was imprisoned. Entering a dark room, I couldn't see my fingers. Apart from the fact that there was no food, it was actually much better for Lily than in the needlework bureau. She simply started to practice star training every day when no one was around. There was no light in the dark room, and the surroundings were there was no light, as if Lily had been forgotten. I don't know how long it had passed. When Lily felt that her lips were a little dry, there was a sound of tapping on the wall suddenly. Yinxiu had not heard it for a long time. The voice rang. "Ziahe, are you awake?" There was a hint of anxiety in his voice now. He was usually a taciturn and emotionless person. Even in the plot, when he went to die calmly, Lily never saw the expression on his face. He was afraid of the anxious look, but at this moment, even though the Yinxiu face could not be seen through the wall, Lily could still hear the uneasiness in his words. Ziahe, answer me. Axiu, don't worry. I'm fine. Lily stuck out her tongue and licked her lips. Maybe she heard the noise coming from the house. Not long after, the lock on the door was pulled open. Lily's heart skipped a beat, knowing that Yingxiu wanted to pull the lock open to let herself out. Lily hurriedly stopped him. Axiu, please stop first, I'm fine for now. I want you to come out. Yingxiu's voice contained a bit of gloom and persistence. Lily was deeply afraid that he would really break the lock, and then she would not be able to escape at all. Even he might get into trouble. No, if Axiu lets me out, it will harm you, and I can't run away. They won't lock me up until death. At most, they will just teach me a lesson. Lily comforted him. The sound of pulling the lock outside suddenly paused. Not long after, Yingxiu seemed to have made up her mind and started to pull the lock again. The emperor will go to the lake in 2 days. Ziahe, you are good looking. You will definitely be favored by the emperor. You will be fine. When Yingxiu said this, Lily could not clearly see the expression on his face through the wall, but she could hear the trembling sound in his words. It was as if his teeth were chattering. You didn't need to look at his face to know that his expression must be pale at this moment. I don't know what kind of mood he was using to say that in order to keep Lily alive, he was willing to make a match for the person he liked. Lily should have been angry at this moment, but after hearing such words, she really couldn't get the slightest bit of anger out of her. There is no doubt that he has affection for Li Beihe. In order to protect Li Beihe, a man is willing to cut off his life with a knife and accompany her to the palace. He just wanted to protect her, but now he was willing to give her up to others just to keep her alive. Lily's initial unhappiness after hearing these words slowly dissipated following Yingxiu's trembling words. The room was quiet. After Yingxiu finished speaking, he also became quiet. The sound of pulling the chains also became quiet. Lily did not speak. After a long while, Yingxiu outside seemed to have finally lost her patience and was a little helpless. Help! Ziahe, are you angry with me? Does Axiu think that I entered the palace to serve the emperor so that I could gain power and take revenge on Lu Cheng? Li Beihe in the plot may have thought so at first, but in fact, she later discovered that she was just a plaything of the old emperor. She was like a fun chess piece, but in fact she had been played with by others from beginning to end. In the meantime, the old emperor allowed her to provoke Lu Cheng and others. Anyway, the emperor had long been unable to tolerate the 3 kings with different surnames, but the court was powerless to do anything to the 3 kings with different surnames. If Li Beihe could use Li Beihe's hand to humiliate the kings with different surnames, it would be better for him. Why not? Li Beihe did not cause real harm to Lu Cheng in the end, but she was known as a demon concubine who brought disaster to the country. Lu Cheng's rebellion was based on the name of eradicating the demon concubine King Jun, because she killed all the people. Applauding, Li Beihe's entry into the palace not only hurt Yingxiu, but she actually couldn't take revenge on anyone. Axiu, I came to the palace for you. When Lily said this with a hint of a sigh, Yingxiu's body softened and she couldn't help but lean against the wall, closing her eyes tightly. He waited until what he had always wanted to wait for, but in the end it was still a little late. He wanted to raise the corners of his mouth, but in the end he dropped them weakly. He was no longer a complete man, and he couldn't even be in this harem. To keep Lily safe, small cyan blood vessels could be vaguely seen under his eyelids as thin as cicada wings. His eyes were rolling and his expression was as pale as snow. After standing like a wooden sculpture for a long time, Yinzioki laughed softly. I'll let you out first. Things that the two of them had never mentioned since entering the palace were suddenly brought up by Lily Leng. Yingxiu suddenly felt inexplicable embarrassment, and he stubbornly started to pull up the copper lock again. Lily knew that she must have felt bad. Li Beihe was wrong, but it was a pity that she regretted it too late, because she entered the palace just to accompany her, but after she woke up, her wish to ask Beihe to help her fulfilled became to protect Yingxiu. A person who was originally being guarded became a guarded person one day. Yingxiu purified herself because of her, but now she entered the palace for Yingxiu. Lily herself wanted to laugh when she thought about it. No wonder Yingxiu laughed when she heard these words. After speaking out, Lily's body felt like heartbreaking pain again, as if a saw was cutting Lily's heart. The words Mengqiu I once said in the plot rang in Lily's mind again. Her eyes were a little red, as if she was not herself at this moment, but had become Lily. Lily was trembling all over, but her eyes were so dry that she couldn't shed a single tear. At this moment, a cool feeling seemed to spread from Lily's soul, and her excitement quickly calmed down. Only then did Lily feel that something was wrong with her. She was almost controlled by Lily's body. After realizing it, Lily broke out in a cold sweat on her back. Although she didn't know how she woke up just now, Lily felt a little scared and didn't dare to think about Yingxiu's purification anymore, and cursed in her heart. After Lu Cheng and Mengqiu caused this series of incidents, the more they thought about it, the more angry they became. Those two people were actually the initiators of this accident. Unfortunately, the last one actually became the founding emperor in the name of King Jun, and the other became the concubine of the harem. Lily's heart was filled with unknown anger, and she said without thinking, "Axiu, I've thought about it. The Needlework Bureau will definitely not be able to keep me here anymore. I want to be a palace maid next to a prince." Although Lily entered the palace this time to fulfill the original owner's wish to protect Yingxiu, but now she thought about it, but she felt a little reluctant for the original owner. The culprit of this matter was Lu Cheng, and now that she has entered the palace, although Lily is not prepared to serve the old emperor like the original owner, it does not mean that she does not want revenge at all. The sound outside suddenly stopped, and Yingxiu standing outside the door had a look of joy or sadness on his face. After a long while, he stretched out his scarred hands and said one word softly. "Good." He didn't say how he was going to do it, or whether he could do it, nor did he ask Lily to give him any time. He just agreed to Lily's request unconditionally. Yingxiu had been gone for less than 4 hours when there was a sound of footsteps outside. Someone seemed to have taken a key to unlock the door. The stern face of the Needlework Bureau's aunt appeared in front of Lily. "The 9th prince is in need right now, Lord Seisu. I wonder if you want to go." When Lily heard this, she knew that Yingxiu had made arrangements for her. This aunt had obviously come to deliver a message, but she seemed to be doing her a favor. Lily knew that after thinking about the meaning of the words, she took out a banknote from her lapel that Li's father and mother had given her when she first entered the palace and stuffed it into it. After the aunt took the banknote, her expression softened a little, and she personally led Lily back to clean up. Lily only left this situation amidst the envious eyes of a group of ladies from the Needlework Bureau. The 9th prince is 4 years old this year. His biological mother was originally a talented person with a relatively low status. She was named Wanyi after she was favored and became pregnant. However, she died in childbirth after giving birth to the 9th prince. Among the many princes and princesses in the harem, the 9th prince is undoubtedly the most important. She was the least conspicuous among them, but when Lily knew that Yingxiu had arranged such a candidate for herself, she knew that she was telling Yingxiu that she wanted to be a palace maid beside a prince, and he understood what she meant. The 9th prince in the plot did not live past the age of 6. In the palace, a place where people cannibalize, he, an underage prince who was not favored by the emperor and had no protection from his biological mother, was like a prey exposed in front of a group of hunters. He could not escape at all. There is no conspiracy behind the harem. Because the 9th prince was not favored, even though he was a prince, when Lily came to the side hall and saw the dilapidated buildings and the tired palace people inside, she still had an idea of the 9th prince's situation. Learn. What she does here is cleaning work. Logically speaking, the servants who serve in an imperial palace have a fixed quota. However, because everyone feels that there is no future in following the 9th prince, Almost everyone in the palace is doing it on their own. Looking for a way out. Once they find a way, they all squeeze out of here. When they see new people coming in, the faces of the old people who were waiting here show disdain. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. Your support is my biggest motivation.